Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call tonight's regular council meeting to order. And as we begin, there is a statement that I would like to read to you. The District of Sooke respects the rights and interests of all individuals and, as a matter of council policy and provincial law, is committed to providing a working environment free of personal harassment. Under provincial law and council policy, the district is obligated to make every reasonable effort to ensure that no municipal volunteer, employee, officer, or council member is subjected to personal harassment or bullying, and the district considers complaints of harassment to be serious. The district will take disciplinary measures, corrective action, or any other appropriate action as is necessary and is provided for or required under provincial law or council policy. A number of harassment complaints have recently come to my attention as mayor of the District of Sooke. These involve harassment of district officers and employees by members of the public, contrary to the district's formal anti-bullying and harassment policy and provincial WorkSafe BC regulations. Council Policy 7.10 expressly provides under Section 1.1 that council members have a responsibility to be proactive to ensure that the workplace remains free from harassment and bullying. Council members must ensure that harassment is not allowed, condoned, or ignored. Personal harassment includes any objectionable comment that has the purpose or effect of intimidating or isolating an individual. Harassment takes place when any reasonable person ought to have known such behavior would be objectionable or unwelcome. Unfortunately, professional employees of the municipality are not in a position to speak out or effectively defend themselves in the context of public council meetings. If a member of the public has a complaint or criticism about a council member, officer, employee, or volunteer of the municipality, there is a due process for making the complaint or criticism and having it addressed by council or by management as applicable. From this point on, I, as mayor, and the members of council will not countenance or condone untrue or rude public attacks on council members, officers, employees, or volunteers of the municipality. Accordingly, in the future, I will take it upon myself as mayor and encourage my fellow council members to stand up for our employees and defend them in public meetings, and not to amplify any harassment that is coming from a member of the public. At the same time, the council and management of the district will rigorously address any criticism or complaints that are formally lodged with the municipality in regard to any persons who are elected or appointed to act on behalf of the municipality. In regard to specific harassment complaints that I have received, these are being processed in accordance with the anti-bullying and harassment policy, and any offending member of the public will be dealt with further to the policy and applicable laws. So on that note, I ask council to approve tonight's agenda as presented. Please note that there is additional public hearing information or correspondence, and it's on your tables with you.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any questions or comments on the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay. Pardon me, I do also would like council to, we're going to, in regards to the agenda, move item PI1, Kennedy Road disposition, to immediately following PH1, bylaw number 604 and bylaw number 605. We could please move that correction or that amendment. Moved by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Ray. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. Adoption of Council and Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. We have June 13th, Committee of the Whole meeting. Move adoption by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor of adoption? Opposed? Motion is carried. June 13th, regular council meeting. Adoption.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Ray. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, we will begin with our evening's delegations. We have 2 delegations this evening. I would like to remind the presenters that you have 5 minutes for the delegation. So if you could please make your presentation within that time period. There is a timer here. And I would like to begin by welcoming D1, EMCS Student Art Bus Shelter Project Community Grant Application. Forward, please. And if you could please just push the button on the microphone as you begin. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks. I know it's unusual to hear a grant review at a meeting like this. I think there were a couple issues that we ended up not being at the regular meeting, so thank you for fitting us in tonight. Basically, we would like to continue with our bus shelter project, which we feel has been very successful for the last number of years that we've had it. It has definitely minimized vandalism in the town core in front of Village, and now we have an additional bus stop in front of the TD Bank, which is excellent. A lot of work has been done over the years, and now we have the beautiful new shelters and beautiful new frames that are in there as well. So we'd really like to continue putting art into those wonderful new frames. And the new frames are much easier to use. In the past, with the plexiglass sheets, it took two of us, one of us to kind of unscrew them, one of us to hold the plexiglass. It was a very time-consuming, laborious process to change out the art. These new frames are quick and easy. You can slide out plastic sheeting that we have fixed to fit in there, change the artwork out, slide it back in. So I do recognize the fact, and we've talked a little bit about the fact that there are fewer places to display the art, whereas before we could kind of jam it all in there. Now we have set frames. However, we feel that with these new frames, we can change the art out more frequently. So we would still be displaying the equivalent number of pieces, but rather than them being in there for 3 or 4 months, we'd be able to cycle the art through more regularly, which I think would also be more interesting for the users of the bus shelters.
Great. So, Council, any questions? You'll see in your materials this evening that there is a request for the total budget, or pardon me, the amount requested to be in the amount of $1,820, we'll round to $28. Questions, comments? Councillor Casper?
I was just going to move the recommendation.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
I was just going to move that the request be approved.
Okay, it's up on the
the
screen. Is
funding.
there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Berger.
And if I could just speak to it.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Casper.
I think, because this is the arts, that perhaps after, if this motion gets approved, we could then refer these types of art-related applications directly to the SPA committee, and perhaps that might give some relief to the grant committee, because I think it's more fitting with the SPA funding and the fact that that's dedicated funding, the program in the arts, and it's targeted money, and I think it's more direction. And then the SPA committee can deal with these types of deliberations, because that's their job.
Okay, well, we'll stay on the motion. As stated, it's that the MCS Student Art Bus Shelter Project be awarded a Category B community grant in the amount of $1,828.
Changes every year. I try to save money whenever I can.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
In regards to what Councillor Casper suggested, it is that future as such applications for the bus shelter be resolved through arts in general.
Yeah, arts in general, because I think it's more
Microphone, please.
I was going to be so bold to suggest that any grant applications that are relating to art or funding of art and promotion of art should perhaps be vetted and funded through the SPA budget, the SUC program and arts budget, and that committee should look at those things and make recommendations to council.
Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that that this might be an appropriate time, as we've been looking at the grants and the A and the B grants. Perhaps maybe we could have staff do a report to show what that would look like, because I think the bus shelter, from the notes tonight, they've been coming before council since 2007. And of course, the B grants are not really designed. So I think it's good to take a look at how we can align, make sure that we're working within our policy. So I think that would be a good option. So I would support it.
Okay. Was the motion hasn't been moved yet. I'm looking at Councillor Parkinson just as your liaison role with the SUC program of the arts. What are your thoughts on these sorts of things?
I think it's a great idea to move it to the SPA committee,
Okay,
and I would second that motion.
okay, can we have the motion moved, please? Okay, and just for clarity on.
Second again.
Exactly. We're moving to receive a staff report to clarify Category A and Category B grants and how art and art-related projects may be vetted through the SPA committee. Is that correct? Yes. Is that everyone's understanding? I guess it's been moved and seconded, moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Parkinson, I believe. On that, Councillor Ray raises a good point in terms of this particular project coming forward year after year. At some point, can they not be considered as a Category A where they receive continued funding, or is there a need for it to move forward every year? Sorry, we're just, if council has a question for you, we can invite you up to speak.
We were told to apply for Category A.
I know, sorry, we're just, the conversation now is with council, so. Okay, I'll refer to the chair of that committee.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Category A grants are set at about $73,000, and in the last round of trying to deal with that last winter, there was a great deal of pushback in terms of creating capacity for other projects. So at this time, that grant level is just about maxed out, and until council makes a decision or we look at a policy about how long that indefinite period will go, the opportunity to bring in new projects doesn't exist because capacity is spoken for.
Okay, so is that some information that perhaps we can receive when this report comes forward? Because I think at some point it would be good to look at, do we either need to increase the capacity in Category A, or is there a need to shift recipients of Category A, or some have a time frame, I think?
If I may, Your Worship, the Category A grants were never meant, according to our policy, to be indefinite, which was raised at the Community Grant Committee level last fall and again at the council meeting of December the 14th.
Okay.
So I think that may need to be part of a staff report, bringing it forward for council to deliberate in terms of what avenue they'd like to take. And look at that policy, because many of the recipients have been receiving funding under the Category A for more than 10 years or close to 10 years.
So this then would be some of the items you would like to receive in this report?
Yes.
That's okay, Councillor Casper?
Well, as the motion's only partially written, it was my intent, and I'm sure the
Microphone.
The motion's only partially correct. My intent on the motion was to refer art-related grant applications directly to the SPA committee. And
Yes.
that's part of it. So that's the latter part.
That'll be the second, the either maybe the first part, or in this case, we could add it to the second part.
And that all arts-related grant applications be referred to the SPA committee, the SUC program and arts committee.
Councillor Parkinson was the seconder. That was your understanding of that as well? Yes, okay. We'll just wait till it's... Just like to see that on the screen. I'm unable to read the... Okay, is that clear for everybody? Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. Okay. And the check will be issued to the EMCS Shelter Project as soon as possible. All right. At this time, I'd like to welcome our second delegation forward. This will be the Welcome to Suit Gateway Project. Welcome, gentlemen, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Feel free to sit in the chair if you so desire.
Okay. Opening remarks. Since our first meeting with the district planner, Danica Rice, on February the 9th, we have been able to develop a project charter, which we will present to you tonight in visual aids. We have communicated with a number of organizations, of which not all, but are including First Nations, the District of Sauk, the Lion and Lioness Clubs, the Sauk Region Museum, Sauk Community Association, the CRD, Rotary, the Charters Creek Salmon Interpretive Center, Chamber of Commerce, Edward Milne School, the Sauk Fine Arts Group, and as late as today, the Ministry of Transportation, which has joined us in our conversation and communication and is prepared to attend any concept meetings and designs that we put forward or come out of any meetings. The Ministry of Transportation has identified safety and parking as two of the many hurdles that need to be addressed in the communication and discussions that go forward. I would ask now that we continue with our visual aids here, and then I will wrap it up. Is it on? Oh, there we are. Okay, you can all see them. I don't think that I need to repeat what's up there, except welcome to Sauk Gateway area is open and accessible for all. Well, I skipped one. Let's see if we can go back. All right. Develop a phased concept plan for the gateway, preliminary wish list, trails, parking, rest area, pullouts, 21st century wayfinding and interpretive signage, economics, tourism, development tools, and many ideas that could come forward from a concept group. Development of funding strategy includes, and I think this is very important for the district and the council that's here, sponsorships, grants, partnerships, capital investment, community support, events, swag sales. I didn't know what that was, but it's the sale of t-shirts, etc. Development of a legacy program. Develop key partners. I've mentioned some names in here, but that's not going to be everybody. Create a cohesive phased concept plan. Ensure that members of the community, business, and community groups are a welcome part of the planning and design process. Ensure that the gateway is meaningful and remains of value to the community for the long term. The goals continued, designed to be contemporary yet reflect the history of Sauk's cultural and community. Have an active timeline to help spread momentum that Sauk is growing and welcoming businesses and tourism. Fund the Gateway project through grant monies and partnership initiatives. Celebrate and share accomplishments. People, project managers, community leadership, stakeholders, government stakeholders, and the District of Sauk staff. That ends our short visual presentation, but I would like to say that the District of Sauk is very important to us as we move forward here. We haven't made a lot of noise in our work to date, but we have been meeting approximately weekly with our planner here, and now that we have MOT on board, they have identified that they think we should be talking to the following organizations and thinking of the following geographical area: the Gateway area, the museum, the visitor center, the Sea Park Recreation Site, the bike park, and the Sauk Community Association RV Park at Sauk Flats. They see that as more of the whole picture than just the gateway that we're talking about. And we had a picture here, but I think it must have got lost of the Gateway area that we're talking, but does everybody know where that is? Okay. That concludes everything that I have at this time. I hope I made it. Oh, look at that. Okay. Yep, I think I made it.
Right on time. Thank you very much, Mr. Farmer.
Well, no, thank you.
Questions, Councillor Ray?
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation this evening, Mr. Farmer. Just for clarity, MOT is good with the Gateway area there as you come across the bridge on the right-hand side?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And they're prepared to look at all concepts, explain to us their involvement in this whole thing and the areas that they need to protect for the future.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Farmer.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So moving on in our agenda this evening, we have our public question and comment period. Please note that all of the public hearing portions, public input portions, as well as RA1 have opportunities for public input specific to those items. So at this point, it's for anything else, which would basically be RA2, RA3, and the correspondence and any of the report section, because everything else does have an applicable public input portion on it. So if anyone has any comments on those items, please come forward to the microphone. And if you could please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Britt Santowski, and I'm at 2206 Church. The only question that I have has to do with the SOFI. It is in the agenda, and you guys are approving it. And because we can only speak to items that are on the agenda, I'm just wondering if the public will have an opportunity to ask questions or pose comments to council on the SOFI at a public date after this meeting. That's all.
So the question, just for clarity, is in regards to when can the public speak about the SOFI report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the SOFI report is in tonight's agenda, so they could speak to it tonight.
But the SOFI
Sorry, can you come?
Sorry. The actual report is not in the package, at least last I checked on Friday's agenda.
Okay.
It is not in the package, so it's hard to speak to it when it's not in the package.
Okay. Perhaps then when we get to that, we can discuss it, or is there another avenue? I have it here in front of me. Is there a different part where then the public can speak if it's just come out today?
I plan on running everybody through the report when it comes up on the agenda.
Okay, so in that case then, like at the next council meeting, can we entertain some public comment if it just came online today, if people are just receiving it now, or I'm just looking for clarity on that?
We send it to the ministry as soon as it's approved by council.
Okay.
So by June 30th is the deadline.
Okay, so then what we could do then is obtain some public input after the staff presentation. Is that out of order? I'm just looking for an opportunity for the public to speak to this. I'll talk to our Director of Corporate Services.
Your Worship, you can you can entertain public comment tonight, or if you want to put it on a future agenda to entertain public input, you can do that as well. With the public's understanding, it would have already gone to the ministry, but you can certainly do either one.
Okay, so we'll deliberate over that when the relevant section comes up then and see what council would like to do. Okay? Other members of the public?
Gail Hall, 2517 Sioux River Road. I'm just wondering about RA2, Shadow West Securities. As I recall, the gentleman came in as a delegation and gave a long presentation. I'm curious to know if you're going to put out some kind of a, what am I looking for here? A request for proposals as opposed to just simply dealing with this one. I don't know if there are other people that have security companies, because this doesn't seem appropriate that it was a very good presentation and so on, but normally if you're going to do business with somebody, you'd use a some kind of a request for proposals before anything is given out.
And that's something council will consider at that time.
Thank you.
Other members of the public? Okay, seeing none, we will move into our public hearing section. The first one is PH1. And we will begin with this is bylaw number 604, official community plan amendment, bylaw 400-7, and bylaw number 605, zoning amendment, bylaw 600-13, Kennedy Close Road. We will begin with a planning department report or presentation.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to just go highlight over the executive summary, because this one's been before council on several different occasions, so I'll just go through as a reminder to what's happening here. If you just give me a minute to figure out how to work this thing. Oh, there we go. The owners of 6527 and 6509 Souk Road have initiated and are acting as the applicant to rezone that part of Section 14 Souk District as shown as Closed Road Plan VIP 78310, known as Kennedy Road. The property is approximately 470 meters in size. The application is to amend the zoning on the property from public P1 to split zone general commercial C2 and service commercial C3. This will also require an OCP amendment for the portion of parcel designated as park to community recreational CR. All applications have been paid by the applicants. The use of Kennedy Road will be limited to unenclosed parking and landscaping in order to preserve the view corridor towards Souk Harbor from Souk Road and to achieve neighborhood scale commercial use of the land in compliance with the OCP. Along with this, because the order has been changed on the agenda, the closure of and disposition of Kennedy Road is also required, obviously, to fulfill the agreement of the rezoning and closed road. They've got to go together. So the disposition, the Kennedy Road was closed some time ago by council. Title was raised. There is an agreement for sale, or an agreement to sale, half to the RJ Charters and the other one to, or EJ Charters, the other half to Harborview Center. The establishment of the price was accepted by Mayor and Council, and is also part of the overall agreement for both the rezoning, the OCP amendment, as well as the road closure. And if there's any questions beyond that, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Are there any questions from council? Okay, so we'll move into the public hearing portion, and there's just a statement that I would like to read. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are the subject of this hearing. Copies of written submissions received to date are available, and Council, I'll draw your attention to the supplementary blue pages. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw, and it is my responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. Those of you who wish to speak at the appropriate time, commence your address to council by clearly stating your name and address. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Submissions must be received before or during the public hearing in order to be considered by council. Members of council may, if they so wish, to ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her view known. So at this time, in addition to what's written, if there is any member of the public here to speak to PH1, we welcome you to come forward. Please state your name and address for the microphone. Could you please push the button on the microphone? Thank you very much.
Keep forgetting that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. My name is Nafisa Drus, and I'm a resident at 2022 Kennedy Street South. And my comments about the presentation just now and the rezoning, which allows the C2, C3 commercial and service commercial rezoning, in my opinion, is too high and open-ended when the district intends its use to be restricted to unenclosed parking and landscaping only. And I make this comment because I have concerns about the history of this particular section that has kept coming up in this as public hearings here. And it seems that it's leaving it open to changes which sometimes come up, and it may not stay as just parking unenclosed. So I'd like to express that concern to all of you.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers?
Yeah, my name is John Stinson. I live at 2021 Kennedy Street South. And I think that the best possibility to do would be just to lease that property out for a long-term lease and keep it. That would be in the best interests of the district. For one thing, this person has been using that property, filled it in, and he's been using it for about a year already. You know, not even his. And now you're going to sell it to him for a pretty good price, I think. I don't think it's right, and it'll probably go through anyway, but if it does, then at the very least I would like to see some good screening and some soundproofing fence put along the south side of the property to block off all the noise and effects of cars and old trucks and stuff parked there. Apart from that, I guess not much else I can say or do, but I hope you take that into consideration, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stinson. Other members of the public?
Linda Batty, 2017 Dover Street, and I will force myself to stick to exactly this particular topic. It's kind of like talking about planet Earth without mentioning the universe. However, I shall do my best. The thing I want to talk about with this property is erosion, and that is the erosion of our public trust and faith in a fair process in this municipality. And I say that because I can remember we've come here a number of times. I do remember one proposal from the town planners where the proposed park land was going to be divvied up down the two sides of the road allowance, and so it wasn't going to be all parking lot with some undetermined landscaping. It was going to be a walkway through, stairs down to Lanark, and it was going to have the park section, instead of being all Souk Road, was going to be kind of in blocks down the other way. So it was going to be one piece of land, but park-like in places down there. Now we have a parking lot only, and I assume it's going to go through because, as the former speaker said, they put fill in there, and I didn't read in the Souk News that anybody got charged with illegal dumping on municipal property, which they didn't own yet. So I assume that that's okay with everybody in the establishment here to do that. Now,
Ms. Batty, you accidentally turned off your microphone.
I guess. Some of my questions are, why, if it's one parcel used for parking, would it not just be zoned the same way as, say, a park and ride lot would be? Why is it upzoned from what it is now? And I think the concern about that is because I don't know how easy it is for conditions to be taken off, but I do know that in the land of development, which I know quite a few people in, once you get the zoning, the rest is mere details. You can get conditions taken off things, you can get covenants taken off to build on John Phillips Memorial Park golf course, So I think residents would assume that this is going to go through for parking, but I guess our questioning is, where is the guarantee that the viewscape is going to be maintained? It is only going for one level parking, because bad things have happened in Souk all the time over that. So I don't quite understand why you'd want to have these 3 different zonings instead of just the one, and just call it the same, whatever the zone is for park and ride. And the other thing is, has there been any agreement with purchasers to say that, I guess what I'm wondering is that the motivation of councillors, like, are you trying to help a developer, or are you trying to help the residents, or a bit of both? I don't know. But because the thing is, we have had concerns in the past about anything being there, which I will not mention, and being told that there would be problems with parking on our road or not, or whatever. And so, I mean, is part of this motivation to sell this to somebody to prevent a lot of on-street parking, or is part of this to say that whatever is done there can allow a bigger development, more units, because they've got parking and on site, but they'll still be allowed to come for a variance again, which happened to us before. And then we'd be told, well, you can get parking permits and complain to City Hall if people are parking in the metropolis of Souk of 10,000 people. I mean, this is, so we feel that we've been dumped on, I guess, would be what it is. We have very little faith in it, because we've made polite presentations here, and sometimes we've been just, brushed off, and really, I don't know if I want to say anything more than that. So that's, I guess, my question is there some kind of plan that this is a good thing to keep the parking off the street, and to make it sure that whatever goes there follows the current bylaws for parking on that property? I guess that's a concern, and that would be that my hope would be if council is looking after us residents down there and having a balance, that if you are basically selling off proposed parkland and recreational land, which is what you're doing, that at the very least the compensation for that in our neighborhood would be that whatever is allowed there has to follow the rules, not get any more exemptions, and that we would not be faced with having to have residential parking and people all over the street. Because I know right now, I'll stick it to parking, but the 3 U's down the road, I've counted up to 12 vehicles there. They're parked all over the actual asphalt of the road, half a dozen of them, plus everybody in their own stalls. So it is a big problem, and I think if you're looking at this as making it a parking lot, I'd hope that however legally it's drawn up, it would be that it can't be changed at the whim of a future council or some other request, and that it would just be the one level parking, hopefully with some kind of landscaping that isn't too ugly, and that we wouldn't have a huge problem in our neighborhood with parking if this is allowed to go through. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Batty. Other members of the public?
Gail Hall, Gail Hall, 2517 Souk River Road. I was also concerned about the ease with which this could be varied once it's in place. Would it be appropriate for a covenant to go on this property to make sure that that it doesn't become part of the development to the east, which we know has been there before, and part of the problem was they didn't have enough room, and this will give them more property to do their development, which is a little bit like granting assistance to business, that if a covenant were put on it to limit it to whatever it is we're supposed to do, landscaping and some type of parking, rather than adding to the property so that they can do a bigger development, which is what they wanted in the first place, which caused all the problem. So maybe to ease the mind of the residents there. Maybe a covenant or something would be an idea that could be used, because clearly the property to the east here is looking to carry on with the development that was turned down before. So if you're going to go forward with something like this, it borders very closely on granting assistance to a business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Other members of the public?
Hi, my name's Michael Mackesy, and I live at 2014 Kennedy Street South. Kind of new here, just been here for about 9 months. And when we first arrived, we drove up to our property and drove around the corner of a derelict property, sitting empty with a small shack on it. That shack's still here today, still derelict, still looks empty. Think about in 15 years what that spot might look like when you give this property away at a reasonable price. It'll probably be, and I'm guessing, if that developer puts the same amount of effort into that property that developer has put into it today, 15 years from now, it'll look the same, just have 3 stories on it, a rundown property, kind of gray, dingy with a red stripe running down the front from when I've looked on online. And no one's going to care. Think about that. Okay? It's kind of important because as the town, you're responsible for the future of this little place. And that's a pretty important responsibility. And I'm not so sure enough care has been put into this one little tiny parking spot to think ahead for that responsibility. So, leads one to think what will happen in the future and what your decision will be. 68 measly $1,000? Think of the future. Think of that property that was on that screen a few minutes ago and what it will look like in the future. Make sure you make a good decision. Okay? It's a little bit of forethought.
Thank you, Mr. Mackesy. Other members of the public? Call for a second time if there's any other presenters. And a third time. Okay, so on that note, I'll close the public hearing portion of the meeting and look to council for their direction. You've received the staff report, some written submissions, and some verbal submissions. Would you like to consider third reading? Questions for staff? Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. I just have a comment and then a question through you to staff. Just with regards to all of the speakers that spoke tonight at the public hearing, they all seem to be the same sort of trend as to what's going to happen in that property, looking for language that secures it to be what it is. And so I just looked through the bylaw itself, and the draft bylaw on page 604, sections 3 and 4 state that it will only be, that the property can only be used for landscaping and unenclosed parking. And the same speaks to sections 3 and 4 of bylaw 605 speaks to the same. So just to give comfort and clarity to myself as well as the public, I guess I direct through staff. With the bylaw only stating that it can be used for landscaping and unenclosed parking, that's the only use that can be permitted?
Mayor, through to Councillor Berger, yes. Any changes would require a rezoning in the same public process as we have today.
Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Your Worship. So that would mean that there would be no requirement to have a covenant on the property then?
I'm not saying that there wouldn't be necessarily a requirement for a covenant. It would just be an extra restriction because the zoning is probably more powerful than a covenant would be. Because I said any changes to that zone or the uses within that zone would require a rezoning application going through a total public process as this one did, where a covenant would not necessarily have to go through that public process.
Councillor Ray?
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to staff. I'm mindful of the comments in terms of the future councils. So we may, sitting here today, hearing the information, agree that this is what we want to see. Is there a process? I know we can't tie the hands of a future council, but is there a process where, you know, that you can sort of log sort of, you know, what the intent of this council is for the future? I don't think so, eh?
I can't really answer that question, but I think the fact that it's all tied up within the zoning and the requirements, right, what can be done and what can't be done, is what council wishes are right at this point.
Right. And then I guess, of course, the conversations from today would always lend the reasoning behind what we made in terms of the decision this day by this council for the future. Thank you.
Question that I have is in regards to the property, and what we hear in terms of the debris or the fill that was placed or the derelict shack and the like. I'm wondering what steps we can take to have those remedies, because it is, I do agree that the site is an eyesore. It's one of the first things that you see when you come into town, and it is unsightly. So in terms of moving forward, can we encourage the landowners to be better stewards of the land? Is there any steps to clear all that junk that's sitting on their way? It's ugly, it's particularly with the facelift that the neighboring business has had in terms of facade improvements. It just makes this one stand out even more so.
I'm certainly prepared as staff, as we walk through the development permit and the building permit application, that we can work with the developer to clean that site up. I'm sure he can be persuaded to do so.
Councillor Pearson, then Casper.
Yeah, we've been working on this this disposal and trying to come up with the best plan. And for the members of the public that commented tonight about the parking, I think that you'll remember there was a rejection of a development plan based on the amount of parking that would be there. So I think that message was sent to the developer that he had to come up with alternative solutions for parking in that area. So I think the motivation to purchase another piece of property for parking was a serious amount of consideration by his part. Not changing the density was to come up with parking, because we heard loud and clear, and that's why that was originally turned down. That development was over parking. So I think that there's an apparent, I mean, you can't guarantee everything, that they won't come back for a development application, but there was a need at that time, I think, this council to turn that development down based on the number of parking and the congestion in that area. So,
can a person speak to these comments?
Sorry, the public hearing is closed.
The second part is that that's a key piece of property in Sooke. I heard some people talk about where that property is now and where it will be in the future. And it's getting closer to the town core, although it is just outside of our downtown core area. It is a gateway, and it's incumbent upon this council and future councils to recognize the importance of that looking better as we do come into town. So I've heard some comments from our staff to put a little bit more thought around improving the looks of it, but hopefully that gets taken care of in development. The one property owner now has done significant improvements to that property over the last number of years, and it's about time, I think, that it's starting to. So it's starting to look better, and I think people appreciate the need, because there's been a lot of positive feedback about the improvements to that property already. So hopefully it continues on in that corridor. So.
Councillor Casper.
I was just going to move the recommendation.
Okay, so that is to move third reading of bylaw number 604 and bylaw number 605. As stated. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Parkinson.
If I could just speak to it.
Yes, you can speak to the
well,
motion.
This issue on to dispose or not dispose of this particular unusable road right-of-way because it was purposely shut off by the Ministry of Transportation and Highways before the area incorporated. And then the district then had to follow those provisions. Has been going on for a number of years, long before actually I started serving on council and also Councillor Parkinson. It's been a somewhat emotional roller coaster in the community. You know, you have people who are concerned legitimately and also people who aren't concerned. They're not here. You know, if they're, and I'm not dispelling the concerns that people have raised, but this council has decided to go through a proper process and reach what we considered fair market value based on what the restricted uses are on the property. And they are going to be restricted uses by way of the zoning. It's not like somebody could build a building on that entire piece of property. And if that entire piece of property was sold as one entity, a building could go up there if it was zoned accordingly. So I'm supportive of you know, the recommendation that we've been working on for some time, not just this council, but previous councils.
Anything further from council? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to PI1, that is the Kennedy Road disposition on page 23. So that will begin with a staff report. And is our Director of Development Services presenting again? Okay.
Yes, Your Honor. Again, because they've got to go, because both the zoning and the road closure and disposition have to go hand in hand. I think I've already done a brief summary of why that is the case because of the agreement with both EGA Charters and Harborview Center. So I mean, I could reread the executive summary, but I don't really think that's necessary. So I'll field questions if council chooses to go that direction. Thank you.
Any questions from councillors? Okay. So I just have a statement to read here. This is this public input meeting is being held to allow the public an opportunity to make submissions to council on this particular item. Staff will review the report, and then any person, which they've done, who has an interest in the item will have an opportunity to make a submission to council. Before speaking, please state your name and address for the record. So, any members of the public, this is regarding the offer to purchase and the attached agreement that's here.
Oh, I have to wait.
So yes, are you here, you're speaking about the offer to purchase?
On the current property in question on Kennedy Street South?
Yes, that is correct. And it's just the offer to purchase that we're dealing with.
Yep. This is directed directly at Kevin Pearson.
Okay, your comments are to be directed to myself.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Yes. I do need your name and address.
Michael Mackesy, 2014 Kennedy Street South. It was mentioned earlier that the property would be purchased, and this has been discussed numerous times, long before my time being here. But there is an outcome that's possible from this, and as somebody else just pointed out earlier, a big building might go up at some point in time, or it might not. Well, there will be a building going up. That's a given. There's a picture of it, and that's going to happen. Not against that. Once this property sale goes through, it is my understanding that will increase the parking for that property. And you're shaking your head this way. So I'm not certain about that 100%. But if it does go through, the building goes up, and then what happens next? So yeah, back to another point made earlier. You may have deliberated this for a long period of time, but the end result of this little $68,000 sale is a property getting built, is my understanding. And correct me if I'm wrong. And so what next? Well, somebody makes a chunk of money, and for $68,000, of which they're paying probably half of that. I'm guessing that. and then they're going to pop a building up. I don't know what the building cost, but it doesn't look very expensive. So what does the town get out of that? I'm not too certain. But as I said earlier, think long and hard before you sign away that little property, because you have control of that right now. Keep control of that property. And hey, that's your choice. But that's why you're all elected. And hopefully you'll pay attention to that little point. And because once you sell it, it's gone. So back to that point made earlier, think ahead. And you're smiling, but I'm not sure you're thinking ahead.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, ma'am.
Nafisa Idrous, 2022 Kennedy Street South. I have similar concerns as what the earlier person has just said. However, I come with an option which I gather may have been considered by the mayor and council, but I would like you to reconsider again, and that is that it's not in the best interest of our community and district to sell it at this time, that property closed Kennedy Road. Would you please consider a long-term lease for it, that it still belongs to the district and it can still be used by the two businesses that are adjacent to it, and it keeps everybody comfortable. And we don't know, the generations that are coming, they may have better ideas for it than selling it just now. So please consider that. Reconsider it if you have to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I need to state my name and address again?
Yes.
Linda Batty, 2017 Dover Street. I just have a tiny thought, and that is how carved in stone in Souk is the idea of preserving viewscapes of the ocean, because when there was previous administration, the Mariners Village was allowed to build a great big thing right at the end of Church Road, so you couldn't look straight ahead when you got the end of Church Road, and the view of the ocean was all blocked there, and other development plans were around there. So my question is, and the same with, of course, any other developments anywhere, but especially at the road ends there. Like, I'm not knowledgeable enough to know, like, is it a bylaw or is it in the community charter? Where does it say that viewscapes to the ocean must be preserved? And which would, of course, then imply that if somebody wanted to do something different with that parking lot area and get conditions taken off or change the bylaws, that there would also be another backup thing that viewscapes have to be maintained, because that is directly down Kennedy Street, right? That's my only question. Thank you.
Are there any other members to speak on this public input matter?
Gail Hall, 2517 Souk River Road. I go back to what Councillor Pearson said, that the building to the east was denied because there wasn't sufficient parking. And now the district is going to sell a piece of property that belongs to the district. That is granting assistance to business. It is against statute, and if you're going to provide him with more property so that he can build his bigger building, it's going to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. I don't think that's true.
Oh, yes, it is.
Any other members of the public? Call for a second time. Okay, we'll close the public input session and go back to council. There is a recommendation before you in the staff report. That is that council approve the offer to purchase received from Harborview Centre Limited and EJ Charters Building Limited for that part of Section 14 Souk District shown on Closed Road on Plan VIP 78310, also known as Kennedy Closed Road, for a value of $37,062 for Lot A and $31,860 for Lot B, subject to the conditions of the offer to purchase, including the rezoning of the closed road, and to authorize the mayor and the CEO to execute the offer to purchase agreement in substantially the form attached and all other documents required for the completion of the sale of Kennedy Closed Road. Someone like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Ray. Any discussion on the motion? You've received some public input. Councillor Pearson.
Just for clarity, I was talking about the property to the west, not the east. So,
Sorry, I don't normally.
so I just wanted to make sure that that was there.
West,
Correct,
sorry.
not the east.
All right. Any further comments or questions from council? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're going to return into our public hearings into PH2. This is bylaw number 642, zoning amendment bylaw 600-287090 Grant Road, 2105 Furwood Place. And we have a report presentation from our planning department. All right, Ms. Rice.
Thank you, everyone, and Mayor Tate for tonight. So I'll try and go through this as this is third reading, but mostly for our audience here, I'll just fly through the PowerPoint as I did the last session. So the location of this site is on Grant Road, about 1.5 kilometers to the west. The applicants made an application to rezone the half-acre parcel from R1 to R3. The owner is planning to subdivide it into 3 lots that would be single-family dwellings or duplex that could be possible on each one. The lots will be serviced with water and sewer. You can see the adjacent zonings and land uses for the most part are R1, R2, RU4 to the south there. And there's a variety of different land uses. Here's a proposal of what the plan would look like. And right now, you can just see on the right, with the R1 zoning, the minimum lot size is 1,000 square meters. They're proposing to have it reduced to 350. The maximum height of primary building is 12 meters, would be reduced to 10.5. The accessory would be 9 meters, coming down to 4. And the lot coverage would be increased from 30% to 45%. You can see within the OCP, it's in the community residential designation. And this designation is seeking to have low to medium density growth targeted towards the community growth areas where municipal services can be provided or accessed in an efficient manner. All new development shall be challenged by the creation of a green building checklist. These are just some examples of small lot houses that could be put in this kind of shape or form. The community residential designation aims to promote a high level of design and design creativity for buildings, integrate innovations for building site that promote sustainable development and green technology, pedestrian connectivity throughout the district within all new developments, and we want to make sure that we have no slope instability. The neighborhood itself here is seeing quite a bit of densification lately to help offset some of the cost of the sewer system which exists out there. We've seen about, I think this is the 3rd application in the recent times, and it's all kind of similar, moving up one zone typically. So the surrounding land uses, as I said before, we have this, mixed use, or mixed variety of housing types. In this area, we have 60s and 70s, and the neighborhood is more or less characterized by, well-established trees and private gardens, and otherwise located along a straight highway. The lot in this case is gently sloping outward, and there is a seasonal creek at the front of it that has been identified as a riparian area. And so there is a buffer protecting that creek in place, and the applicant has just so everyone knows right off the bat, that the applicant has gone through and got a qualified environmental professional to do an assessment on that, and that there are no major concerns associated with the development on that creek. The site is partially covered and still with trees for the most part. The front more so with trees and to the east, and then the north side is more pasture-like, and that's the picture on the right. There are two dwellings there right now. One is a single-wide mobile home, and the other is a rancher-style cabin. And as stated by the qualified environmental professional, there's new construction does not present any management risk related to stormwater. Sorry, community amenity policy. I just had is there one they have to do? This particular development does not require a community amenity policy, and so it's basically just saying what that would be, and my next slide will go into it. But basically, they're exempt from providing an amenity contribution. There will be development cost charges, though, borne by the applicant, and so the long-term plan is that there will be a trail along Grant Road and stormwater and drainage improvements, and so money that the district will collect from the developer at the time of subdivision will be kept in a reserve fund, and then eventually that will be used to develop a trail and drainage system all along Grant Road, hopefully in good time. And this takes us to our recommendation that council give third reading to bylaw 642 to rezone the property located at 7090 Grant Road, or also alternative address 7105 Furwood Place, from large lot residential R1 to small lot residential R3.
Okay, before we enter the public hearing portion, are there any questions from councillors to staff? Okay. All right, my public hearing statement. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are the subject of this hearing. Copies of written submission received to date are available, and there are two received, councillors. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw, and it is my responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. For those of you who wish to speak at the appropriate time, please commence your address to council by clearly stating your name and address. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Submissions must be received before or during the public hearing in order to be considered by council. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of councillors this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. For everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this meeting. No one will be or should feel discouraged, prevented from making his or her views known. So at this time, I would like to welcome any members of the public forward to speak to 7090 Grant Road, 2105 Furwood Place, and there is the written submissions received for councillors. We'll call a second time for any members of the public. And call a third and final time. Okay, so that concludes the public hearing portion of this, and staff have put forward a recommendation. It was on the screen for council's consideration. So, councillor, what is your pleasure this evening? It is that the recommendation is that bylaw number 642, zoning amendment bylaw 600-28, be read a third time. Moved by Councillor Berger. Seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ray. Any discussion on third reading? Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Planning, for the presentation. Okay, our next item this evening is bylaw number 643, zoning amendment bylaw 600-29, 7135 Grant Road. And similar to the last one, we will receive a response, or pardon me, a report from our planning department.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, on to 7135 Grant Road, another rezoning application, similar neighborhood, a few houses down. This time, the applicant has made a request to rezone just short of 3 acres from large lot residential to medium lot residential, so R1 to R2. The owner is planning at this time to subdivide the property into 3 lots that could ultimately permit single-family dwellings and duplexes on each lot, and the property is also serviced by community water and sewer. You can see it's a large lot, and at this time, this is what the subdivision would look like if the rezoning were approved. You can see, well, this is their second phase. Surrounding land uses are, again, a mixed residential. Looking at the zoning changes from the present 1,000 square meter minimum lot size, it would be reduced to 600 square meters. Building heights would go from 12 meters, they would stay the same. Accessory buildings, same, and lot coverage would just increase slightly from 30% to 40%. Again, we're in the community residential portion of the OCP designation, and again, we're looking to develop residential, have growth, within areas that are targeted towards the community growth areas where municipal services can be provided and accessed in an efficient manner. So the DPA number 2, again, promotes a high level of design and design creativity for buildings, integrates innovations for building and site design that promotes green and sustainable development, works to promote excellent pedestrian connectivity throughout the district within new developments, and also works to protect development from slope instability. Neighborhood observations out here, very similar to the last PowerPoint, where we have a range of 1960s, 70s, 80s infill, variety of architectural styles, variety of rentals and suites, and there's a lot of affordable housing options, so it does make it appealing to move forward with these kinds of projects. Mainly mainly within this area it is R2, and so that would be consistent with what the applicant is trying to achieve. The OCP supports growth and densification. Here we have a gently sloping lot for the most part, except for as it comes right off the highway, immediately there is a drop. The site cover, the site was formerly covered in trees. It has been cleared to begin development activities. New lots have been prepared and include site leveling and new drainage works, and an engineering report has been prepared that provides a rainwater management plan that will be implemented at subdivision if this application is approved. This is a sketch of what the rainwater management stormwater plan would look like. And in this instance, the developer has agreed to provide a monetary contribution based on a single-family dwelling density, and so the base density for this property is 14.4 dwelling units. All dwelling units above 14.4 are recommended to contribute amenities that can look like a variety of different things. The property otherwise is free and clear of legal encumbrances, and should this application be approved, we would be looking at having a Section 219 covenant registered on the property to address the amenity contributions. And other than that, our staff recommendation is that Council give third reading to bylaw 643, zoning amendment bylaw 600-29, and further that council direct that prior to adoption of bylaw 643 that staff ensure that a section 219 covenant be registered on the property to address amenity contributions towards the proposed development of the site, and further that council authorize the mayor and chief administrative officer to execute the section 219 covenant.
Thank you very much for the report. At this time, I'll read the statement for the public hearing. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are subject of this hearing. Copies of written submission received to date are available. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw. It is my responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. For those of you who wish to speak at the appropriate time, please commence your address to council by clearly stating your name and address, that you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Submissions must be received before or during the public hearing in order to be considered by council. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views known. So at this time, I would like to welcome any members the public forward. Call for a second time. And a third time. I will close the public hearing portion and return to council. I apologize to council. I did not give you the opportunity to ask questions of staff following the presentation. So if you would have anything you would like to ask, please feel free to do so. Councillor Pearson.
I move the recommended action. Give third reading.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ray. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Casper? Okay. Is in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And that brings us to public hearing number 4. Bylaw number 644, zoning amendment bylaw 600-30, Silver Spray Soup Point water lot rezoning. And we do have a presentation from planning, and councillors, there is a public hearing, a second public hearing package for you as well. Welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The water lot shown hatched on the subject property map is the area affected by the application. The water lot encompasses approximately 2,600 square meters and is situated along the southern boundary near the entrance to Sauk Harbor between Possession Point and Pike Point. The water is currently zoned W1, passive recreation, which includes such uses as government wharf, fishing, habitat enhancement, pier and breakwater, etc. The applicant has put forward a proposal for a W3 marina zone to accommodate a floating dock and some commercial and research activities. The upland area from the water is zoned for destination resort within the Silver Spray zone, which focuses on uses that are complementary to the overall resort being established. This proposal is therefore consistent with the upland zone. The official community plan designates the area as water. As with any rezoning application, we review the application in the context of the official community plan. The OCP does not have specific policy statements around water designations. However, there are some general statements regarding economic development, tourism, environment, and parks and trails that support applications of this nature, which I've noted in my staff report. This rezoning application was submitted by the applicant as a result of an application to the province for a license of occupation. The application to the province is included with the staff report as well. The rezoning cannot be finalized until the province confirms that the license of occupation has been approved. The bylaw would be rescinded if the license of occupation is refused by the province. Staff recommend approval of the rezoning because the application is consistent with the application with the province and the policies outlined in the OCP. The proposed site is also adjacent to an upland area that permits destination resort development, and the overall proposal is consistent with Council's strategic priority of facilitating and promoting long-term community prosperity. That's it.
There are questions from members of council to staff? Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. Through you to staff, and I'm not sure if this needs to be directed to whom on staff, so sorry for...
Direct your comments to me.
Yeah, sorry for being vague. Given the fact that we were just given this package, and I don't know how any of you guys have gotten through it, I've gotten to the first 3 pages. I don't know if there's a mechanism that exists that we can postpone the public hearing to another date. I don't personally feel comfortable casting my vote when not being able to read submissions. These are submissions by the general public as well as residents, and I don't have the time to read any of this because we were just given this today. So I'm not sure if there's an appropriate term or what the mechanism is, but I'm not comfortable voting on anything. I mean, I don't know, do we continue on hearing from the public? But at the end of it, I still haven't been able to read this.
Okay, we haven't opened the public hearing yet, but I'll get clarity from our Director of Corporate Services.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. You can postpone this public hearing to another time and place. You need to tell people that are in the room now when you're going to do that, and it will be a continuation of this public hearing. Otherwise, if you schedule another public hearing, it needs to be re-advertised. So those are your choices. You can either reschedule this one and postpone it,
okay,
and say when the time and date is so people know when to come back, or you can have another public hearing in which time you have to re-advertise.
Okay, Ms. Reard?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may add to that, you could continue with the public hearing tonight, and then you could postpone third reading to be able to read the package and become more comfortable with it for your third reading.
So just for clarity then, because if we open the public hearing, then it remains open, so then we would continue to receive. Are we in a position where we can continue to receive pieces and then, or anything? Because if the public hearing isn't closed, then the public still has the ability to send more submissions in. And let's say our next public hearing, and then let's say we postpone this to the next regular council meeting. We could, in theory, receive another package of information on that date as well, though, or does it close? I just need clarity there.
Sure, Your Worship. We've already advertised for the public hearing.
Okay.
And so a public hearing is a public hearing. It's a matter of the third reading, and the third reading could be postponed.
I see.
Yep.
So we would close the public hearing, in
That's
which
correct.
case council could not receive anything further, and then third reading would be at the next regular council meeting.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to staff, I agree with Councillor Berger. It's quite a package. What I'm looking for is if there's any information in this package that goes back to when we originally looked at rezoning the property, and which was, I think, in my first term, like 2012, where we had maps of everything that was going to be proposed. I mean, that's the piece, like, I'd like to see what the concept has been all along. Is this new, or is this something that was already in something that I've seen and approved of in terms of design? But that would be new information if it's not in this package.
Okay. For staff, I think, if I may summarize, Councillor Ray, your question then is this a continuation of what we've already...
What I'm looking for was we had a map of an outline of the vision of Silver Spray, Soup Point, with all of where the housing and the cottages and all of that was, and I believe it included a marina. But I don't see that when I flip through here as part of our package. It's just the history part in terms of how we've got to today, as we have, Mr. Thornton's been before us a number of times over the previous council. And I think there's some of that information would have been helpful for today, that if it's been there all this time, then I'm aware that it was there, but I'm sorry, I didn't realize we'd get all this information this evening.
Is there any feedback from staff to Councillor Ray on
that? Through the chair, the package that's before you is all correspondence that's been received from members of the public, and there may be some schedules that were attached that may have other information in them associated with previous parts of applications that have come before council. Over the last number of years, there's been development permits, text amendments, and what have you.
If I may, Your Worship. So actually what I'm looking for was the CD3 zone. So is that information in here then? 29. Okay. Okay, so I think the information I'm looking for is in the package.
Okay, so that would be on page, Councillor Pearson, note, page 29 of public hearing package 1 or 2?
This is 2.
Number 2?
Yes.
Page 29? Just
Yes,
so
29
I can...
on the bottom. Sure.
Oh, I see, and that's showing the Silver Spray CD zone.
Correct.
Schedule G. Okay, that's what you were looking for, Councillor Ray?
Yes, and I would have wanted to see that before a decision, but now that it's in the package, if we did postpone it, we already do have the information before us. It wouldn't be new information.
Okay. Councillor Parkinson? Okay. So just in terms of process then, we can go through and open up the public hearing, and then at that time, once it closes, council can then determine if you wish to postpone a decision or you could make it tonight. Should we should we postpone the decision, no further information can be received by council. So no more emails or phone calls or anything related to it because it must close. It's just the decision that's going to be delayed. Okay? Something to consider. Okay, are there any further questions to staff at this time? I might have already asked that. Councillor Pearson.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to the staff, to Ms. Decision. You said there's a provincial government application, and if the government application is turned down, then this zoning would be rescinded. Is that correct?
That would be a council decision to rescind the bylaw, because it would then not be consistent.
Yeah, I was because I thought I heard you say that it would be rescinded. It would be up to council to rescind that at that point.
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have through the chair to you? Do we have a timeline on when the provincial government application would be approved or rejected?
We don't have a timeline on that.
Okay. One more.
Go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. So, is the current CD zone in place for the property? I'm a little unclear. I recognize this came from last meeting. So that to amend the bylaw 600, so it's W1 to W3 is the gist of the entire application, or the zoning in front of us tonight, right?
That's correct.
Just changing it from W1 to W3.
Yes, the 2,600 square meter portion of the water.
Correct, okay.
Yeah.
So, if I go back to, sort of through the chair again to you, so if I go back to CD3, the original zoning, on Schedule G, it says, purpose, the zone provides for D, a 115 berth marina with accessory facilities, correct? That's the current zoning that we have there now? That's page 29 again, Schedule G. That sounds correct?
Yeah.
So that's accurate, the current zoning. So then again, as the question that we had at the first meeting, sorry, I'm asking a lot of technical questions here, sorry. So then all we are asking tonight then is for third reading after public hearing to change from W1 to W3.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from members of council to staff? Okay. So I'll read the public hearing statement. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are the subject of this hearing. Copies of written submissions received to date are available, and that's in package 2. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw, and it is my responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. For those of you who wish to speak at the appropriate time, please commence your address to the council by clearly stating your name and address. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Submissions must be received before or during the public hearing in order to be considered by council. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views known. So at this time, I would like to open the public hearing and welcome any members of the public to speak to bylaw number 644, zoning amendment bylaw 600-30, Silver Spray Souk Point water lot rezoning.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Thornton, 1000 Silver Spray Drive, and I figure even though I'd like right of response, because I'm sure there's some questions and obviously some issues raised, I figured it might be better to just give a summary of the history and clear up some of the apparent confusion. This, for me, is a little bit like Groundhog Day, a little late in the year, I admit it, but this matter was settled at one time, finally in 2002, but just a brief background. We acquired the property in 1996. We were all part together, Souk and East Souk at the time, unincorporated in 1999, Souk incorporated. 2002, after 6 years working within the community, we received zoning that included this provision. Now, this provision is not to be confused with the 115 berth marina. This provision is specifically referenced as the dock and the marine berths for, let me just see if I can find the exact reference, but it's the portion in the destination resort lands. And if somebody could bring up that one slide, Catherine, are you able to just back up a couple of those slides there? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, or bring me, yeah, just to the one that shows the water lot, but that also shows it in with actual water on it, please. A little further, I think, is that, yeah, okay, that's probably good enough there. Thanks. Anyway, yeah, the destination resort zone, which is all of the land on the left-hand side, the peninsula, that land is zoned for the destination resort, and it is also zoned for boat moorage, rentals, and docks accessory to the hotel or lodge use. Okay, so there were to be 2 areas for marine access. And in the rezoning negotiation with the first elected advisory planning commission in the province of British Columbia, with the community, Souk, East Souk, everybody that was involved in multiple public hearings, and there were over 60 of them, actual over 60 public hearings, or versions of hearings, right? 64, but who's counting? Over the 6-year period, the plan that was endorsed and supported was that we were going to put a covenant on all of the waterfront of Silver Spray to protect it as natural, with the exception of having a marina that we were digging out of upland, so we were actually creating net gain for the environment, and we were going to have a dock and commercial activities where the lodge is, because the idea was we're going to have hundreds of guests staying there every day, and they've got to get on the water, and they want to come on a boat over to Souk or tour the park or go on kayak trips or get on sailboards or paddle boards. They need safe access. And also, if there's some accident on the rocky terrain out there, we need to get somebody out there to help them right away. And this is before the Centre for Whale Research showed up. But what you'll see is that in 2004, Silver Spray and Souk unanimously voted to connect. So when we got our zoning in 2002, we were not part of Souk, even though people like Ed McGregor came out and supported our project, and many people in Souk were avid supporters. In 2004, we unanimously decided to connect, and we came with this zoning. And the waterfront, you see, the reason I wanted that slide up, you see that dotted line that designates the area that is marked W1? That line wasn't there. We had the ability to do our docks, and we had no limitation. There was no such thing as W1, just like I think there isn't today in East Sooke, right? So if we had this zoning and we hadn't joined Sooke, we'd be fine. We would just go ahead and ask the province, can we put in the dock? And they'd say, oh yeah, your upland zoning is fine. But what happened is that in 2006, Sooke decided to do W1 everywhere. Now, they didn't call us. We didn't know. Right? There was all kinds of, that stage, this property was owned by an Ontario associate, right? So he never got results. I never heard about it. So what actually happens, though, if you go back into the information about actually this is referring to meeting of November of 2012, a request for a decision to council, where it says here, prior to the adoption of Bylaw 270, Sooke zoning, the waters offshore from Sooke were not zoned. Zoning the surface of the water started in 2006 with Bylaw 270, which assigned zoning to approximately 16 water lease areas. In the early stages of preparing Bylaw number 500, no changes to the marine zones were anticipated. However, as work progressed, it was realized that not all of the zones assigned by Bylaw 270 reflected the terms and conditions of the particular lease. So all affected lease owners were contacted in writing to advise them of which zone was being proposed for their water lease area. During the public hearing on the matter, it was noted that there were additional water lease areas that had not been recognized. So W1 landed everywhere. A bunch of people were hurt. Some people, everybody scrambled to go and fix it. And Sooke Council fixed it of its own initiative. They went and fixed this and then found, whoops, we didn't get all of them. And they went and fixed those ones. But they didn't look at our marina, which is down Zone 2. This is at the north end because it's W1 on the foreshore, because it wasn't a lease. It's a license of occupation to allow boats from Sooke, the fireboat and the water taxi, to connect. So even this public hearing, we wanted originally this to deal with both issues, but there'll be another one of these to fix the marina at the north end, the 115 berth marina, because it got down zoned, right? But it was right there on the map showing it was okay, but it wasn't a lease. It was a license of occupation. And this dock, we can't do this dock because we're W1. So, we didn't realize it in 2000. And what happened was I looked at some of these things here. There's over 100 docks in the Sooke and East Sooke Basin. We want one. And in return for that one, and the marina that's inland, like I say, we put this covenant all along the foreshore. Now, what's happened, of course, is that in that bay, if you look in that bay, there's nobody but us. And by us, I mean there's no other homes other than those that are on the resort lands and or at Silver Spray. So tonight, there's a buyer that we sold to that is opposing. And there's someone else, and who knows else, that wrote in and is opposing because now they've bought from us an area near where we've always proposed having a dock and where the zoning bylaw says we can have a dock and where for 20 years we've been planning a dock. Right? And we came with this when we showed up. It's like we pulled into the parking lot with a brand new car and somebody backed into it. And we're paying to get it fixed. And some people that we brought with us want to smash it again. It's a strange analogy, I know, but it feels like that. So for me, this is not a rezoning. We want an unzoning, a dezoning, or a rezoning. We just want to go back to what we had when we showed up at the party. And so we look here. One of the people that's written one of the letters is saying at no point were we aware that this would become a commercial wharf. Well, that's wrong. It's right in the zoning bylaw. It's right in the covenant. I've sent you today, because I was surprised by this person's writing, I've sent you a copy. Not only does it appear in the zoning bylaw and in the maps and everything else, but we registered a covenant on all of the properties. So every one of these buyers, I understand this gentleman, his wife is a lawyer, they have a covenant registered on the property that says right on it. It says, subject to paragraph 2, the grantor covenants and agrees that it shall not construct or install any dock, any part of which is located on the land or the foreshore adjacent to the land for the benefit of any parcel, but subparagraph 1 shall not apply to the marina and does not apply to a dock constructed in connection with a lodge. So in other words, we froze out all of the waterfront in Silver Spray, 2 kilometers of waterfront to permanently protect it from the 100 docks that are on a similar space inside the harbor in order to have 2 public accesses to water. And somebody dropped W1 on it and took it away, and we're just asking for it back, and we're paying to get it back. We think it should have been just fixed, right? That's what we proposed. And we had buyers or investors for the lodge come forward, and they said, well, gee, you guys have got this W1 zoning laid on you. Is something going along? Is somebody trying to stop the resort? Because you're not going to have a successful destination resort if you can't get people onto the water. Now, an update, there's 87 pre-sales now. 87 pre-sales right now. So that means we will have if there's just 2 people staying, it's about 160 people. Most are 2 bedrooms, so we're 250 people overnight guests now. Okay, about a third are going to live there. 1 dock. We are asking for 1 dock. And a couple of people who own homes are saying, oh, no, we bought them knowing there'd be a dock, but no, we don't want a dock. Right? So that's the context. I find it surprising because nobody can claim this was a surprise. As a matter of fact, and I don't think Gail Hull and I have ever agreed on anything, but she remembers all of this, right? This goes back. So I'm not here asking for something new. I'm not asking you to give us something we didn't have. We're just asking to restore the right that we came with. And I should point out that in the minutes that talks about why Sooke, one of the reasons why Sooke decided to...
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Just in the essence of... No, there isn't really a time, but I just want to give others an opportunity.
Sure.
I think council is...
Yes. Okay, well,
I
just want to point out one single thing here. Back then, Janet Evans was quoted, and she said, Silver Spray has an estimated build-out value of $71 million for its residential base and $70 million for the commercial component, right? If you think the value, and I've shown you what happened to the tax value after the W1 landed, $6 million came off the assessed value then. You know the value of waterfront when you have access to a dock, when you don't. Just look around at the residential values. You can compare West Vancouver, those ones that have the docks and those that don't. So all we're asking is 1 dock for our destination resort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Okay, other members of the public?
I hate this. Not only did I sit in on most of those public hearings, probably all 90
Hall,
of them.
just in the matter of...
Gail Hall, 2517 Sooke River Road. I think I sat in all 90 of those public hearings on the other side of the fence. At home, I've got 3 large boxes of Silver Spray material, and I will stand beside Mr. Thornton on this. He's had that piece of water as a whatever it is now. He's had that ever since the beginning. And I suspect that there was a rezoning through Sooke, and he got rezoned because it's there. It's on every document I've got at home, and I can bring them all and stack them in front of you. So that part, I definitely agree with Mr. Thornton, and oh, that hurts. But I'm interested also in this extra package you've got. Is it something that the public should have seen prior to the hearing?
These are all submissions that came in when we advertise, and we welcome submissions. They're ones that came in. That's like any other public hearing that we've had today.
But are not they, something that we would be entitled to see as well? I mean, I'm asking.
Your Worship, they're actually in the hallway with the other packages right now.
I'm sorry?
They're out in the hallway with the other packages.
You're going to try and read them tonight along with council? I mean, this really isn't writing very well, but I don't think it's necessary anyway, because he definitely has had that from the beginning.
Other members of the public to speak on this? Welcome.
Your Worship, Council members, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. My name is Joseph Jachniak. I'm speaking on behalf of my friend Krzysztof Kotecki, who sits there, who owns property at Silver Spray at 7520 Ocean Park Place, lot number 3. He asked me to give a perspective to the council from a professional point of view. I am a professional engineer with 35 years of experience, registered in British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. I own a consulting firm. So we have a little presentation here. I'll try to go as fast as I can through this thing. And just to preempt this whole presentation, we're really not, or Mr. Kotecki is not questioning the reasoning why the developers are asking for what they're asking. It makes perfect sense. We are not questioning why the council or the planners are for the amendment and for everything. All we're questioning is the location of it. And what you will see in the next few minutes is basically presentation that will question the location of where this thing is presented. We provided both in electronic format and also printed format that PowerPoint presentation, and the only thing that you don't have in it is a little video which would like to play in a second that shows the conditions at that particular location during storms. Okay, so the PowerPoint presentation is called Idealing Setting, Great Vision, Noble Ideas versus Reality of Open Ocean and Looking for Safe Solution. Okay, works, perfect. Okay, I'm not going to repeat that because, obviously many of the council members already know what this bylaw was all about. All I can say is that despite of the discussion or the previous speakers here, the properties were being sold without owners being told that there were some previous issues with the zoning, and the only thing that, and I was involved actually helping Krzysztof to procure this property. At that time, the strata plan prohibited construction. See, oh, there you go. This is the yellow text in it. A strata plan definitely prohibited construction of docks in front of waterfront properties, and that was the main reason why Krzysztof bought the house and invested about $2 million in it. Okay, and no one at that point told the owners that the boat moorage, rentals, and dock accessory may be built in front of their properties, instead in front of the hotel and lodge. So the understanding given by real estate agent and also in supply documentation was, yes, there will be a marina in the northern part, and yes, there will be a destination resort and a hotel with this accessory. Except right now where the marina is being proposed has nothing to do with the location of the hotel. It's in the adjacent bay. So the question and surprise came that we're saying, yeah, we're building a hotel or planning to build a hotel in a totally different location, but we're going to put the marina in front of your houses, waterfront properties, in a location where there are not supposed to be any docks or anything of that nature, and clearly marked as W1. So perhaps the owners right now, and I understand there's another submission similar to that, are kind of surprised that, well, they bought the properties, they basically paid the money for it and have legally binding contracts, and somebody says, oops, there was a mistake made many years ago and the zoning was wrong, so we were just kidding. Okay. Okay, very quickly go to the next one. We fully agree with the vision of presented that Mr. Thornton, that this is all about safe access for residents and traveling public. There's rapid response needed in the event of marine or marine mammal emergency. It's all about arriving and departing safely by sea. It's about mooring a research boat and having access for the Department of Fisheries to hydrophones and other monitoring equipment, or responding to situations involve whales or other marine animals. It's a great vision, and I think Krzysztof supports the vision. Okay, so the great vision is not written here as a sarcasm. It's actually, we believe that this is a wonderful vision. Okay, the next page we just randomly, basically not randomly, we just happened to look at the support from the CRD, which presumably similar to what Souk Council is also promoting, is that there is a need for recreational boat launch. There is public use of the proposed marina is supported. and they also talk about East Sook OCP supporting the marina for emergency purposes because East Sook residents are concerned about access and egress to the community during emergency. It's understandable, and it's a very noble idea. Okay, here's the problem. The problem is that the open ocean does not care about great visions and noble ideas. Open ocean is relentless in its unspoiled, untamed, and rough beauty, and this is the main attraction of the Silver Spray development and of the Sook Point. Open ocean cannot be turned into Disneyland. A safer location is needed to realize these visions and ideas. To give you an idea, this morning I stayed at Krzysztof's house. This morning was beautiful. Around noon, the wind started. By the time we're leaving for this meeting, the wind is at 25 knots, projected to be at 35 knots, and there's a gale warning on the area. So going there in a boat or any kind of thing is a suicide at this point. Okay, here is a quick map, which is basically similar to what you've seen before. This is an open area. This area looks straight at the Juan de Fuca Strait. This is not protected. That little area, that little kind of a Y-looking thing, this is the area which gets the wind directly, either westerlies or western southerlies, coming directly into the bay. So the Moonlight Bay is not really a protected area and never was, and there never was, at least from the time that Krzysztof lives there, any boat that ever tried to moor there. We're boaters, we're sailors. I am an instructor in scuba diving, and this is not a place that we would even try to approach in a boat. We actually tried, and with the sea moving and swells coming from the ocean, you don't want to go there. Okay, here's another picture of the same thing. Here you see those two things. The area of, I don't think it has does it have a pointer? No, I don't think so. Oh yeah, it does. Not sure where that goes. Here we go. Actually, you can see it. No. Okay, the area that Moonlight Bay is that tiny little area. Maybe I'll show you. It's right there.
Okay.
Okay, very quickly going to the next slide. Okay, reality of the Moonlight Bay. Moonlight Bay is open to the Juan de Fuca Straits. What you see is a picture. It's a beautiful picture of the Sook Point development, and the Moonlight Bay is just kind of right at the end of it. But as you can see, this is open to the ocean. You get winds and you get waves coming straight from the Olympic Peninsula. This is an average day, okay? This is what it looked like today, around noon. This is what it looks normally around that area. So you can see the waves, ocean waves coming right to the shore and splashing against the rocks. This is actually lot number 1 and lot number 2, and that little piece of rock out there, this is the landing proposed for the dock. You can see how rough the water is. Okay, the area is, especially at this time of the year, there's lots of fog, and unless you have a radar, you shouldn't even be approaching it. Lots of logs and kelp in the area. What you see here is actually on the rocks. You can see the change in the tide. So it's about 4 meters, 3 to 4 meters. Tidal changes are changing about every 4 hours. And actually, top of the rock that you see, this is where the Sook Point is. So the Sook Point is not where we are standing here, where the picture is taken from. It's on the top of this rock. So and actually on the other side of the peninsula. So there's no direct access. You have to go through the back of the property. Okay, there's a little bit more logs, pictures of logs and kelp, and you can see lots of logs sitting on the rocks. This is the exact area where the marina is supposed to be. So you can see on the other side Olympic Mountains. There's no protection in it whatsoever. Lots of kelp, and you can see logs. This is what it looks like every day. Now, this is a very calm day. This is the access right now to the marina. A steep 21-meter path, windy, very slippery. There is lots of water running on it when it rains. Very difficult to negotiate, especially if you imagine somebody carrying a boat or a kayak or anything like that, or somebody who's in a wheelchair for that matter, or even with a cane with mobility problems. And now, if we could play the video, please. Okay, this is March 13th. This thing happened every time when you guys lose power here in Souk or East Souk. It's very traceable. This is what Moonlight Bay looks like. This is the area where the dock will be. This is the East Souk Park. So you can see huge waves crashing against it and fully open. And this is not something where you can have a marina and kayaks and paddle boats. And yes, there's a few days of the year where you can do it, but this thing happened last year. It happened about 10 times. That's the proposed place for the marina. As you can see, this is only 1 minute video, so it will be finished in a second. Now, this was really nasty storm. The wind reached about 100 kilometers in this area. Okay? There's no protection whatsoever. And any idea that you can bring a water taxi from Souk to this area is just crazy. Okay, I think it's almost finished. It was only 1 minute. Yeah, so that's East Souk Parks and the waves crashing against the rocks of the East Souk Park. Okay. Thank you. How do I get back to it now? Perfect. That's the dock. Okay, I'm an engineer, and I have hard time believing that something of that nature, anchored on 4 points, that is now supposed to move on 4 chains, 2 of them attached to the rock, 2 attached to the anchors in the bay, and something that must move 3 meters with the tide and survive 6-foot ocean swells, 100 kilometers per hour winds, and impacts with logs and boats can survive. Okay, so the reality it is, originally when Krzysztof bought the house, it was supposed to gated community. For many months there was actually a padlock on it. Now, because of during the construction of Souk Point, the padlock was removed, but the expectation is that the gate would be locked. The only access to this marina is through private properties. Closest public road is 350 meters away, so that's not that you can drive to this place. Steep, windy, muddy, and rough trail from private property, 21 meters up to 40% climb, equivalent to 7 stories high building. Impossible to drive down to dock, impossible to walk down for elderly, motion impaired, or in wheelchair. Okay, unsafe for children, unsafe to carry down boat, kayak, or paddleboard. You'd have to carry it down or up 7 stories. Unsafe to carry. I'm an instructor, scuba instructor, so I would never take my students to this area. Unsafe to carry scuba gear and for water entry and exit. This is a suicide. Unsafe to carry equipment for hydrophone maintenance and mammal research. Impossible to dock or moor boat or pick up tourists. Impossible to access for fire department. There's no access to it unless you start pulling hoses through somebody's house. Unsafe to access by ambulance attendants or evacuate injured. If you imagine that a person of my size would have a heart attack down at this dock, how do you get them up? You cannot just put them on a stretcher. Somebody has to carry them up, 7 stories up on that path. Okay, in other words, if looking at the requirements of CRD, site is unsuitable for public boat launch. Like there's no place for a boat launch if that's what desire is. Site is unsafe for public use. Site is unsafe in case of emergencies for most days of the year. How this site would help citizens of East Souk in case of emergency, I have no idea. But definitely I wouldn't send them straight into the Juan de Fuca Straits out of the site. Or maybe you can tell them to wait until the weather improves. Okay, so the question was, there you go. So is there a safe alternative? And this was Krzysztof's at least understanding from the day one. This is a view of the lighthouse on Souk Spit, which we all are familiar with. This is the nice walk that you can take, and you can see the lighthouse right there. If you just walk across, this is what you see. This was the view from lighthouse on Souk Spit. This was the famous marina for 115 boats. It's a very beautiful place. It's right visible from the spit. Here it is. The marina is safe alternative marina already approved in Bylaw 600. There's already a permit from the Ministry of Forest for it, standing permit, so everything is in place for it. But somehow, at this stage, this is what it looks. See, there's a very beautiful area, fully protected. Everything is in it that would meet all the requirements that the developers of Silver Spray would want, except, it's probably a kilometer away, so you cannot walk directly from the hotel to it. Okay, that's the other view, right? So this is ready to be finished, and it's right now sitting like that. You can notice the orange fence on the top. This is probably a 20-meter drop down. Not very safe location at this stage. Okay, go to the next stage. Next point here. A safe alternative, finished road to Marina from public road. It's a beautiful road. You can just drive up to it. Okay, so safe alternative, original marina was included in bylaw 500 and 600, already properly zoned by municipality, existing permit from Ministry of Forests. It is outside of the gated community. It's a safe location protected from wind, waves, and logs. Safe road access from public road already exists, so you don't have to go through private properties. It is an ideal location for recreational boat launch, if that's what the municipality would like to see. It is easy access to public, easy access to elderly, mobility impaired, or in wheelchair. Easy access for fire department and ambulance. Ideal egress location in case of emergency for East Sook residents. You're right there. You're right opposite from the Sook Harbor in a safe area, and actually right across from the spit. So you could even transport people to the spit and offload them there. Okay. Well, I'm almost finished here with the presentation. Just a few simple things that we noticed from application to Crown Land tenure from the applicant, which we basically decided to look at, which says the purpose of the dock is to provide safe access and to and from the sea from Sook Point Ocean Cottages Resort. We agree with it, but we don't think it's true because the proposed location is not safe at all, as you see in that little video. And then it says Moonlight Bay is the only adjoining location that is protected enough to provide safe access to the sea for Sook Point tourists, residents, and the traveling public. Not true. There is half-finished marina in Area C, which we've just seen. From application to Crown Land further, without the dock, all Sook residents and guests seeking safe boat access will need to travel 20 to 30 minutes each way. Not true. There is a half-finished marina in Area C. Okay, the next one is about riparian encroachment. This is from the forms from the ministry. Will any work be completed within or adjacent to the riparian zone? The answer is yes. Yes, this is a true answer. Existing landowners are demanding protection of their riparian rights. They never had it in their contract that they gave up riparian rights and the marina would be built in front of their house. Okay, further, visual impact. Will there be any adverse effects on the project and any potential adverse effects on the sight lines, etc., etc.? The answer was no. All property owners were advised of the zoned and planned use well in advance of any purchase. Not true. The zoning in front of the waterfront properties is currently recreational W1, and that's what people bought. And Strata bylaw prohibits construction of any docks in front of these properties. It's not Krzysztof's problem that the documents provided by the sellers didn't make any sense, and now they're coming back after this thing saying, well, was just wrong zoning. No one told purchasers that a hotel dock will be built in front of their houses instead of in front of the hotel. Okay? The next one, just very simple, sound, odor, gas, and fuel emissions. This is a really interesting one. Will the project construction or operation cause any of the following? To disturb wildlife or nearby residents? Sound, yes. This is the white text is what comes from the application. Some boat motors, no kidding. Okay, odor, no, really. Gas, no, except gas used by some boat motors. That's what it is. Fuel emissions, no, except possibly from some boat motors. So is the answer yes or no? Commercial dock built next to a steep cliff directly within the eco-sensitive zone of Sook Park for fishing charters, moorage of boats, whale research, maintenance of hydrophones, emergency situations. It will have a huge impact starting at 5 o'clock in the morning every day. Okay, disturbance to wildlife. This is pretty much my second last slide.
You need to go one further slide ahead.
Sorry, sorry about that, yes. Disturbance to wildlife and wildlife habitat. Will the project result in adverse effects to wildlife or wildlife habitat? No. And the answer is the pilings are to be on rock that dries on low tide. The ramp is elevated and the dock floats. The inert concrete blocks will create more structure and underwater surface area than their footprint. What does that have to do with animals? Okay, this is right in front of the viewpoint of Sooke Park. This is where all the tourists go. This is not true. There is a big family of seals living in the bay. We can see them every day catching salmon. Birds are nesting on the rocks. Whales are coming right into the bay and against the shore. Sea otters are playing on the rocks. They actually, Christoph got sea otters in his garden, right? Just playing and walking around. Bald eagles live in the surrounding area. Turkey vultures flock above this bay in the fall. All these will be gone with the presence of a commercial marina. So here's the last slide. There you go. Forgotten residents and lot owners. Municipality of Sooke was aware of opposition by Silver Spray landowners to the dock proposals since 2nd February 2016. We really appreciated the input. We received some previous correspondence from Mr. Howard here, and we've been researching this thing since. The public hearing PH4 information package does not include any of the concerns of existing property owners within Silver Spray development. Somehow that part get missed. Owners of the properties within the Silver Spray development are asking the municipality and the province to protect their right according to the contracts that they signed when they bought the properties. And owners demand that the developer follows the original plan, which has been approved in Sooke Bylaw 500 and 600 and in the Strata Plan bylaws, which he created himself. In other words, the plan is good. The location is bad. That's what it is. So there's no need to create another marina when there's already a beautiful marina half finished and unfortunately looking like an eyesore right now directly from your community. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. There are other members of the public that wish to speak?
Your Worship, could I speak as well? My name is Chris Lott. I'm a lawyer representing Mr. Kotiki. I've made...
We can't hear you. Sorry, you need to sit closer to the microphone.
Sorry. My name is Chris Lott. I'm a lawyer, and I've been retained by Mr. Kotiki to make a submission to the Ministry of Lands with respect to the license that's been requested to be issued. I am hoping you'll listen to me speak on that application and some of the materials that I've filed with them. If I could, I assure you I will be brief.
You would need to speak in regards to what this particular public hearing is about.
Yes. And I'd like to refer to how the application has been treated to date. The economic impact on Sooke has been a significant portion. It seems to come again. It's in staff's consideration.
Sorry, and just for clarity, we'll also need your, I know that you're the lawyer representing Mr. Koteki, but we would require your name and perhaps
I'm sorry. My name is Chris Lott, L-O-T-T, 9830 4th Street in Sydney. Okay, thank you. Economic opportunity and impact is a concern that staff looks at and that everybody is presenting and obviously concerned with council. Unfortunately, what is now occurring is an economic negativity. My client had purchased property. He spent a very significant amount of money on it. His property is assessed at approximately $1 million, which is generating tax income for the municipality. If this zoning goes through, there is a very significant chance the value of his property will decline, as will all of the waterfront properties along this bay. If the proposed marina goes in this location, it destroys the major attraction, as you've seen in the pictures and as the property was purchased. So I think the municipality should be considering the negative impact of putting a marina in this location, which appears to be a major factor. The other issue that strikes me is the problem with consistency in the zoning. Now, we were not aware of the background that we've heard today from Mr. Thornton about how there was apparently an agreement that this would go through. Unfortunately, that does not appear in Sooke zoning. It does not appear on title. There is nowhere that shows there is a potential of some development on the foreshore in front of this expensive new home that's been built. So it's not consistent to now put in zoning that creates essentially a commercial marina right in front of this property, which was marketed as a wonderful waterfront, glorious, and you've seen the pictures, and as it is. The application that it was before the ministry for the foreshore license, unfortunately, one is not able to obtain the application from that department. We didn't see this until it was provided to us recently, and there appear to be some inconsistencies in what has been presented to Nanaimo, where the foreshore applications are dealt with. There are two particular areas that Nanaimo, I say Nanaimo, that's where the ministry operates out of. They're reluctant to issue tenures to a party who holds more than one. It's a consideration in theirs, and we've raised that with them as one of the objections. Because of the marina development that you've had shown to you, that is a license of occupation that's held by Silver Spray or a related or a subsequent party. I know that titles have changed, but there was a marina granted on the foreshore in a very close area to what is now being asked for. So that is a concern that Nanaimo is going to have to deal with, and how that comes back to this council, I don't know, but it's certainly a concern that has not been dealt with in Nanaimo at this point. The other issue which is one of riparian rights, which you've been exposed to on all your creeks and drainage, and it's become a huge issue in the last 4 or 5 years. But the classic riparian right concern is that an owner of waterfront property is entitled to access to his property from deep water. The 8 strata lots will not have access to their property from deep water. I'm not sure if you recall the chart that was on that, but it showed a series of rocks on the right of Moonlight Bay, and then the wharf is built right in the middle of the area that you have to come into to get to the strata lots. So there is a what's called a riparian issue. I've provided you with the material that I sent to Nanaimo, and there's some case law that says you have to have the ability to take a 40-foot boat into an area and turn it around to get to your waterfront property. That's the very rough test that Nanaimo is looking at. So I'm suggesting that is another issue which Nanaimo is going to have to deal with, and it will affect how this foreshore license goes forward. On a practical note, in the submission that was made to Nanaimo, a major point is that there will be public access, there will be availability for emergencies. You've seen the practical problems with that as far as the foreshore goes and the weather. I suggest you also note that the plan has no public road that comes down to that area. There is no provision for public parking anywhere near the dock area, and the zoning restricts the use of the dock area to users of the hotel. Now, I suggest that's an inconsistency that is not appropriate with the way this application is being presented to you. Given the forces of nature that you saw in those photographs, I would suggest you should be concerned about the environmental potential of pollution, and given today's potential damages that grow out of pollution, Exxon Valdez and all those horrible things. The suggested use includes boats, there's going to be oil, there's going to be things on that dock. It's not just paddle boards and kayaks and those sorts of things. You're now looking at a real potential environmental hazard. And a practical concern, the process that's happening now, I would suggest that Council is not going to be able to consider any input from the ministry or make any changes, because your input is closed after this public hearing if you were to close it down. So the practical problem of that is once you pass this zoning, it is going to have a very significant effect on my client's value of property. That zoning will become a public document, which is not a public document at this point. If my client wants to try and sell his property, if he wants to get financing, he has a significant impairment if this zoning is passed tonight. So I hate talking like that. Thank you for your time, and good luck.
Thank you. There are other members of the public? Call for a second time.
Just have to deal with a couple of the issues just to set the facts correct here, please. First, you know, the old, it's hard to suck and blow at the same time. If at the end of the day, if the dock can't sustain boats, it'll be gone, and that'll be that. With the slides that are shown, if it was always like that, and if the engineers of today can't deal with that, then of course it won't last, and this will be a non-issue. But in reality, this is a cantilevered boat ramp, so the boat ramp stays out of the water and it drops down when there's weight on it, or you pull the cord and the dock itself floats free. It doesn't take up 50% of the bay, it takes up less than 10% of the bay. The dock, as I mentioned, it's on 4 anchors, if you will, and it just floats, only 60 feet long, 10 feet wide. And so it's not this big marina. I don't know, it has to be zone W3 in order to have the commercial aspect, but it's just 60 feet by 10 feet, just a dock, a couple of boats, that's all it is. Tough weather, move the boats, right? You hear the big weather's coming in, the dock ramp is always up unless you're using it. It is wheelchair accessible, you just go to the edge, start rolling out, the ramp drops down onto the dock. The marina that they're referencing is not owned by a related company, as you saw, and there's title information that shows that. It's not us. We know the people that have bought the marina. That's great. Hopefully they'll do that someday. Like I say, we'll probably assist them to try and get the W1 removed from it so it can be operational, but this is the resort. The resort group has one place to get into the water. You don't get all of the people, 200-300 people that will be staying there soon, let alone 500 or 600 later. You don't have to move them all the way down. There is access on our own land. We don't go on Kateki's land. The dock doesn't go in front of his land at all. The dock goes straight off our land, parallel with our land and only our land. Now, there was a submission here that you should be able to bring a 40-foot boat in. Well, in that weather, why would you? But if you want to, you can, because there's lots of room. You can see if you look at the slide pictures. Right up there, none of our dock is in front of anybody else's land. It's in front of our land. And we have our own road going down. It was said that we can't drive down. It's impossible to drive down, but you can. We do it all the time. Some of you have been down. We drive the golf cart right down. And that's before we do the boat ramp, which is going to make it a lot easier, right? So people have access. The issue of why you would bring a 40-foot boat in there for some of the other lots when there's a covenant on it preventing docks, how you're going to get off those boats on those rocks with those videos, I don't know. But there is no right for anybody else to have a dock in that bay. The value of the property, I think the value of Mr. Kateki's property would go up, but I'd be willing to entertain, doing some $1 million purchase of the property so that you know that you're covered. If you want to sell it, we'll buy it, $1 million, no problem. The public hearing package, it says here, the owners of the property are asking the municipality to protect their rights and demand that the developer follows the original plan, which has been approved in Suit Bylaw 500 and 600, and the Strata Plan bylaws which he himself created. I stand by those. They all say the dock associated with the resort, right? That it's in the bylaw. All of this is in there. I'm not asking to change any of that. It's in the disclosure statement that this gentleman read, and I've provided a copy of that. There's only, as far as studying this submissions, these are the only letters in opposition. These first pages 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's that. All of the rest of this is just information about the zoning bylaw, about the covenants, about the material. This is all stuff already on the public record. There's nothing in here that's opposing it. All of these are from Mr. Kateki and then there was today this other gentleman that he spoke to that also is a lot owner there. So again, we stand by it. The site is unsuitable for a public boat launch. We're not launching boats there. The site is unsafe for public use. That's not accurate. It is safe, and if it's not safe that day, we just don't use it. It's unsafe in case of emergencies? No. If it's safe that day, it's safe. And if there's an emergency, somebody's going to get in the water to save somebody that fell in the water. Or, and I've scuba dived all over there in a few days. Is it unsafe where we are, right up against our property? It is safe for children. We don't have to carry boats down, etc. On and on. These statements on this slideshow, I can refute them all. But again, I'm just going back to the original submission. We shouldn't be asking to rezone this property. We should be asking to remove the incorrect zone that was applied after the fact. We already went through this in 60 meetings over 6 years to get this zoning. We spent $5 million of our money bringing city water to honor our part of the rezoning. That's what we did. Plumbed the whole East Souk Road from Secret Road. Built a 185,000 gallon reservoir as part of our pledge to the rezoning. Donated that, and all of the facilities that we put in, 1.8 times the public access to public waterfront, we provided to the public as part of our deal in the zoning. And the W1 zone came after the fact and devalued our land. That's what happened in our case. We're just asking to please restore what we came into town with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. There are other members of the public that would like to speak. Okay, welcome.
I'm R.J. Wilkins from Langford. I'm actually a purchaser at the Souk Point. During the staff report, there's a couple things or principles that she put up there. One was economics. One was environmental. By putting this dock out in the out at Souk Point, provides an environmental benefit as well. For all that traffic that's going to be in there, hundreds of people at the resort will no longer have to travel into Souk to get into whale watching, fishing expeditions. They can then get picked up right there at the resort, get on the boats, which also provides an economic benefit for the providers of those services because they can have a quicker turnaround. They can maybe do 3 charters a day rather than having to go all the way into Souk Harbor and loading up again. Having a water taxi into Souk can be a support to the local businesses. Just driving here tonight from Langford, I thought about it on the way by. When I got to Gillespie Road, I thought, okay, how long would it take me to come from Langford versus Souk? Which way would I rather go? What has more amenities to me? And I thought I'd go to Langford. But you know what? If I arrive at a resort, I want to park my car. I want to have a few drinks. I want to enjoy myself. I want to take a taxi, water taxi into Souk. Enjoy my time, walk around, spend my money, come back. It's also an investment for me, so I hope to make some bucks, and I hope it to be a very popular resort. So there is economic and environmental impact by putting this dock in. It has been in the original plan since I've been introduced to that particular resort. Plan to use it for kayak. You have to remember also, as a resort's not going to put people's life in danger. If the resort gets a bad reputation, people aren't going to come. The resort ends up being a failure. So there is an onus on the people that operate this resort to make sure that it's, people are safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call for a third time if there's any public comments.
My name is Christopher Kotecki, and I'm owner of 7520 Ocean Park Place, lot number 3. And I would like to express my feeling because I bought this property 3 years ago, and quiet, close to the wildlife property with beautiful, nice view. And after 3 years, when we bought this property, and after 2 years when we settled in our new house, the environment and the decision, the situation of our lot and our house and our life will change completely, because we settle in this place. And we want to be close to the wildlife, close to the nature, and with nice view. When you will decide to change to rezoning to W3 and dock will be opposite our house for fishing, for fishermen, and for whale watch. There are boats for two engines, 5 horsepowers. It will be the pollution and noise, starting from early morning, 4-5 a.m. when the fisherman starts to catch the fishes, and during the all day when they will come back with the fishes, or the tourist wants to go for the whales watch, and all day we will be, it will be, if we want to be, because we didn't buy the property in the harbor. If we want, we can buy in harbor, in the Sydney or Victoria. We bought the property which is far away from the city, and we have to go to this property half an hour from the nearest shop. And we bought the silent, and now what we have, Mr. Troughton, he changed bylaw, and now he can build the Manhattan in the forest, close to us. It will be 500 permanent citizens and 200 employee staff, which will work on this point. And we are the closest neighbors. And what happened? This is completely different situation when we bought our lot, and now what will be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kotecki. So we'll call for a final time. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak?
My name's Rick Wellsby, 7100 Seacliff Road. I've been involved with the project for 20 years myself in the land planning and going through the zoning process as well. Certainly, the owner of Lot 3 should have been well aware. He certainly had every opportunity to go to the district and look to see what the zoning was, because the zoning did allow for, and still does allow for, over 600,000 square feet in the area that surrounds the subject property. So I'm just not quite sure how he can be saying that he wasn't aware or didn't know, not to mention the other items that were in the covenants and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Okay, I will now close the public hearing. Council, you've received significant verbal presentations this evening. At the start of the public hearing, there was some thought of, after closing the public hearing, of postponing third reading. So at this point, I would like to know where and how you would like to move forward. Councillor Parkinson.
I would like to move that we postpone the meeting or the third reading until our next meeting to give us time to read the information that we've received.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, it's been seconded by Councillor Casper for discussion. Councillor Casper?
I'm going to pick up on what the staff had said, that if the property received third reading, or if it was rezoned, and if there is no lease granted by the ministry, then it would all be for naught. So I'm more inclined to not just postpone it to the next or July, but to actually postpone it until there's confirmation that a foreshore lease in fact has been issued for the purpose, because I'm concerned about that.
So a question that I have to staff then is a council decision needed in order to move the application to the province ahead?
There. Sorry.
The application is running in tandem with the application with the province, so we would hold this application at third reading until we heard confirmation from the province, at which time council would be considering fourth reading of the bylaw to rezone it.
Okay, so a decision by council is not needed. It's separate from the provincial process. Then one is not, the province doesn't need, will continue down their way regardless of council's decision, or is council's decision needed to finalize the application to the province? No. Okay. All right, Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. I remember, I don't know if it was our last term on council or not, where we had a very similar situation where a fellow in the Whiffen-Spit area, we changed his zone to W1, which didn't allow for his current use of a group moorage. Hence, we created a group moorage W4, W5, I believe, zone. And if memory serves me correctly, I'm just wondering if maybe we can get clarification through the province, because if I remember correctly with that particular zone, the province wouldn't issue it unless the upload zone matched it. So for some reason that stuck with me, that the province wouldn't issue the foreshore or for the marina for him, or the wharf for him, unless it was not contrary to what our zone was. So in other words, we had to change to a group moorage before they would issue, because the upland zone had to match the water zone before they could issue the permit. That stuck with me on that one, which is why it took us quite a few nights. If you remember, it took us quite a few nights to actually get there. But having said that, I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm actually thankful that the presentation took so long, because I got to go through my package. And in going through the package, there's actually a lot of paperwork that's fairly redundant that we have within our zoning bylaw, as well as our CDU zone. Everything's quoted, basically. Like, I Googled everything and looked it all up on our website as I was going through all this paperwork. So most of this paperwork we have already read. And the part that I find interesting is that in looking at this particular application, the comprehensive development zone, or CDU zone, that we've issued for the Soup Point, it's still called Silver Spray, in our zoning bylaw, in Area A allows for boat moorage, rentals, dock accessories, and so on. With the W1 zone that we've put on that section, we've actually caused a problem within ourselves, because W1 doesn't allow rentals. So in going back to what Mr. Thornton had spoke about, it does, you can see the timeline as to when the W1 came into play and how it affected this particular zone, because we wouldn't have allowed him in Area A to have boat moorage and rentals if W1 was the upland zone, because it's a conflict within our own zoning bylaw. So I find ourselves in a bit of a predicament just with that going forward myself, because he would have to be changed to a W3 to be able to allow for the commercial component of rentals. So my first statement is that I wanted to be able to afford the opportunity to read through all this, because I wasn't comfortable making a decision without hearing public submissions. And I thought these were an awful lot of public submissions, and it turns out lots of it is paperwork that we've already read. So based on the zone and the information we have in front of us, and the timeline of which when the upland zone was changed, and if memory serves me correctly, we will have to do the upland zone prior to the province issuing the foreshore, I'm comfortable with going ahead.
Councillor Berger, were you looking for any response from staff to clarify anything?
Oh, no, because I think there's sort of mixed at the table, and I know it took us a little bit to even get that answer, so I mean, it's just going to rely on my own memory that I'm quite certain that that's why we had to go, numerous nights with that particular application, was because we needed to have the upland water zoned so it wasn't contrary to what they were issuing.
I remember that particular application as well. Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you. And as I was listening, I was also looking, and in fact, it was May of 2012 when the Whip and Spit matter came before council, identifying that, in fact, as that there had been downzoning in the bylaw 500 out of 2010, and they had indicated at that time that they had not given any notice. And I agree with Councillor Berger. When you look at the CD zone, it's all there, and so I would agree that if it's there, it was done all properly, and the zoning was in place, and for it to have passed. So I'm quite satisfied and would support the rezoning. I'm also aware, sorry, Your Worship, that we were looking at this at May of 2012, and so that goes back more than 4 years. So this has been on the books for a considerable amount of time.
Yes, Councillor Casper.
Yeah, and I'm not here to rewrite history, but on that particular Whip and Spit situation, bylaw 500 actually stripped away previously zoned W3 on a water lease that had been in place for a number of years, even though the upland zoning was residential. So that was done many years ago. There was a commercial fisher who actually owned that piece of property, and he had a commercial dock for his commercial fishing boat. He got a license, commercial license approved by the province in the 1980s. And what happened when bylaw 500 was developed, it totally stripped away that W3 zoning. That was the situation there. This subject property has never had a lease, a foreshore lease, on or around the properties. They've had what is referred to as a license from the province, but not a foreshore lease. And our zoning bylaw in 2006 and 2007 decided, the council of the day decided to rezone water where there were foreshore leases issued by the province of British Columbia and the federal government. And there's correspondence in the district's records that actually attest to that. And the ministry was involved, and they were given notification. We received all of those applications that were in place and already approved, and that was the basis for the zoning in 2006, 2007. Councillor Parkinson was at the council table at the time, and it was a fairly extensive process. Council of the day decided to do that, and that's how we created the W1, 2, and 3 categories for water zoning only on lands, or only as what the province outlined as land, where there was a legitimate foreshore lease. And it recognized both the upland and the permitted uses that the province had in fact issued of the day. And the province did issue water licenses and leases that weren't in conjunction with the upland use. They admitted that. But they had no problem with us in 2006 and 2007 rezoning and zoning those foreshore leases in accordance with the actual uses. So, I can appreciate the comments that have been made, but, I was around the council table of the day that made these decisions. And to put it in context, I don't feel comfortable on giving a third reading on a bylaw until I see a completed application approved by the province of British Columbia for a foreshore lease on the said area. I'm not prepared to do that, because in my mind, you're putting the cart before the horse. I'm not disputing the fact that the upland zoning does permit this type of operation, but there's never been a foreshore lease issued around this property or this subject property. And when I've gone through the documents here, and I can't remember what page it is, but it's all part of the original, and it was referenced that Area C, in the original development that was approved before this municipality became reality, it's Marina, and that's at the north end of the original property that was rezoned, known as Silver Spray. And that was my understanding of where the marina was to be built some time ago. So that was my understanding many, many moons ago, that that's where the marina was to go. And I'm not disputing or opposed to someone making an application to have waterfront zoning, but I'm not prepared to support something unless the province issues a license. So that's my position.
Okay.
I want that clarified.
All right, well, at this time, the motion on the floor is that council postpone third reading of bylaw number 644, zoning amendment bylaw 600-30 until the July 11th, 2016 regular council meeting. So that's on the floor. Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And speaking to the motion, I'm wondering then, and again, this is going back to, I guess, procedure, because my recollection is a little bit different than Councillor Casper's, and if I remember correctly, and again, I'm just going off my memory from that particular application, is that a foreshore lease wouldn't be issued unless it matched the upland zone. So the only way for us to know that is to contact the ministry, but we can't receive any new information after today.
Right.
So,
So
that sort of puts us in a very difficult spot, because we're now saying, no, there's no way you're getting it. Should my memory serve me correctly, and I remember we went back and forth and we looked for an answer from the province with respects to foreshore leases. So I would hate for us to put ourselves in a situation where we'd have to do this all over again.
So at this point, okay, so I think at this point, I'll go to our CAO. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to add to that, you are able to you can direct staff to look into further information. It's just the fact that you've closed the public hearing and you will no longer accept public information.
Yeah, so we can receive information or clarity from staff. It's just no further public submissions as to where we move with this. So I'm hearing that there is some questions that council would like answered. We have had Councillor Casper state that he won't support it until the province grants the application. Others are prepared to vote now, and then there's the motion to postpone it to July 11th. So at this point, what I'll do is I'll call the question on postponing it one more meeting, unless there's any questions you want answered from staff right now. Councillor Pearson.
Well, I have, well, we're postponing things to July 11th. Are we going to have the information that Councillor Casper wants by July 11th? I mean,
we don't know about the provincial timeline. So do we know, though, like, is it 6 months, a year, 2 years, a couple weeks?
Your Worship, I hate to go on record of verifying how long the province is going to take. But at this point in time, the last conversations we had with them, they are moving along, but they are also having some staff issues. But I think what Ms. Rear said with regards to, while a portion of the public input may be closed, if staff is instructed to move forward to get information from the province to get some indication of when a decision may be made, or at least get a sense of what the decision may be made or what the decision will be.
Okay. Councillor Ray, then Pearson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, is there a urgency or a necessity to have it to the next meeting, or can it go till we can get some information back from
I think
staff?
initially, Councillor Parkinson may correct me if I'm speaking out of line here, is that because there seemed to be a significant amount of research or submissions, the next meeting was selected so that council could actually go through and read the materials, and I think that's why that date was set, if that's correct. And so then we've now determined through the public that a lot of this information is what we already have seen before. It's publicly read, and Councillor Berger sort of verified that. Councillor Casper would like to wait till the province has made their decision. We can get a sense of that timeline from staff, maybe by the next meeting. Otherwise, our next meeting after that would be September. We only have one scheduled council meeting in July, none in August, and then we would pick up again in September. Councillor Berger, then Parkinson, then Pearson.
Not me.
I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you. And I don't have a problem waiting till the next meeting, because for me, the key piece is finding out if that upland zone.
Okay.
And I would personally like to know just if that's the case, because I really don't want to hinder an application due to the fact that we don't know for certain. So for me, I don't have a problem waiting to find out if the province does in fact require the zoning to be changed before issuing any sort of foreshore lease.
Okay, so that's one piece for staff. There's two now. One is to have a sense of the timelines on the application from the province. The second one would be to clarify the points that Councillor Berger has made in regards to the upland zoning. Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Your Worship, I was just wondering if we postpone it, then you have to let the public know the date for the next meeting. That was the idea, right?
Yes.
So then, do we make it for the 11th, or do we wait until we get further information, because you don't want to keep postponing?
In terms of
right?
the information, I think staff can potentially clarify or get, the province may say, come back and say, we don't know and we're not going to tell you, and that will be the decision then. Council will have to take that into advisement. They might come back with something else.
Your Worship, I can check with the province and find out how the application is going and find out if they can give me some time frame. But I think it's imperative to know that from policy and practice from both the province and ourselves, we like to run the processes in tandem, so we're not giving anybody a false sense of they're going to, if they get this, they're going to get this. So that's why we try to work with the province to ensure that if their process is positive, then our process is positive too. We've actually gone on record with regards to this particular item over the last couple of years, as a matter of fact, with regards to making sure that relationship between our two agencies is carried out. We just didn't want to put one. They didn't want to put us in a position of, our council in a position of making a decision on a rezoning based on the fact that the lease was there and vice versa. So that's why they're running in tandem.
Okay. Councillor Pearson, then Ray.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Howe, for that comment through Your Worship. There was, and Councillor Berger's kind of got some good recollection around that. And I think we dealt with a lot of this at the Land Use Committee in an informal discussion. Then it came to council back and forth. And there was a number of properties that were identified in the Souk area that, in fact, had received down zoning, or what we would call down zoning, from W2 to W1 and W3 to W1. And if I can remember correctly, we actually passed a motion that said we were going to identify all of the properties that were affected and then go back and look at them as a group, because we wanted to stop this sort of piecemeal. Now, I don't know whether we actually gave staff that final motion to go back and look at every property, because there was a bunch of upland non-conforming uses, I think is where it started. But we didn't want to be dealing with this every single time. And there was a lot of discussion around that. And it started at the Land Use Committee, and I think you were there as well.
I was there, but did that not get corrected with the zoning bylaw 600?
I don't think it got corrected in bylaw 600.
What? Okay.
If I may, Your Worship, I think what happened, and it's a bit before my time, but I do recollect reading some material that, and it's based on what Councillor Casper had mentioned, that through bylaw 500, when that was reverted all back to W1, I believe, if I'm correct, that the staff of the day went through all the existing license of occupations and designated, or went through the rezoning process and designated the ones that were in existence, not something that was proposed, but everything that was real and live at the time.
Exactly. And through the chair to you, I think that there was supposed to be a report come back somewhere in there that required further action.
Potentially, yes. Okay.
Did it get?
No, Councillor Ray is next.
Okay, sorry.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think in terms of at this point and process, my concern is that if the CD zone was in place and the bylaws were in place, I'd like to see where and when the zoning went from W3 to W1. Because everything that we've seen since 2012 is as is presented here tonight. And if there has been an error, and I understand what Councillor Casper is saying, but in terms of process, I think it's important that we follow the paper trail and that we're not making the assumption tonight that it was W1 all along. I don't have anything. I didn't find anything in the package that said it was W1. I can't find anything other than the CD zone that said it was that he can do the marina and the boat opportunity. So that's the piece of information that I think is critical to making a decision. Okay, Ms. Lashane?
If I may, through the chair, the bylaw that we inherited through the Capital Regional District, the zoning bylaw had no zoning on the water. And then in 2006, when the zoning bylaw, our first Souk zoning bylaw came into effect, that's when the water was zoned to W1. And then through the rezoning processes, the new zoning bylaws came into effect. We did remedy a number of the lease areas. There was a large research project to figure out what each of those leases said, and then zones were applied to each of those. So in our current zoning, I think that we have the vast majority, if not all of them, complete. In this case, this is a brand new lease area, and they're applying for a W3 to change from their existing W1 zoning, which is applied to the entire surface of the harbor.
Okay, so at this point, there's a motion on the floor, and that is to postpone the reading. I'm going to call the question on that motion. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, so I'll remind council that no further public submissions may be received, but clarity from staff on those items will be provided at the July 11th meeting. Okay? All right, so we're going to move on in our agenda to PI2, the District of Souk 2015 Annual Report. And is there a report to council on the annual report?
Your Worship, we don't have any presentation, but we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Oh, okay. There is, I do have some speaking notes. At the last council meeting, we received the draft of the annual report. So the community charter requires each municipality to present an annual report for public inspection and to hold a public meeting at least 14 days following the release of this annual report. At this meeting, council must consider the annual report and submissions and questions from the public regarding the report. The District of Souk 2015 annual report includes the municipality's audited annual financial statements for the previous year of 2015, a list of the permissive tax exemptions for the previous year, a report on the municipality's services and operations for the previous year, a progress report on the performance of the municipality with respect to established objectives and measures for the previous year, a statement of objectives and measures that will be used as the basis for determining the municipality's performance during the current year, 2016, and following year, 2017, the details of any declarations of disqualification made against individual council members during the previous year. So at this time, I would like to welcome any members of the public to speak in regards to tonight's annual report. Call for a second time? Third time? None? Okay. Any questions from councillors on the report? Great work, staff. Thank you very much. We have noted through this process that some of our biographies are a bit dated, so staff has kindly sent out what was there, and that's sort of with our bios and the like. So all of that's going to be updated and refreshed as the website is getting revamped this summer. So look forward to that, and thank you everyone for helping out with those corrections. So at this point then, I think the recommendation then is to receive the annual report. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Ray. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, next one is PI 3, Agricultural Land Reserve Exclusion Application for 2249 Souk River Road. This in regards to the playing fields at Fred Milne Park. Yes, Councillor Pearson.
I move the suggested action.
Okay, is there a seconder by Councillor Parkinson? And that is that Council forward the ALR exclusion application to the Agricultural Land Commission with regard to a portion of Lot 2, Sections 15, Souk District Plan 17066, except that part in Plan 19346 in order to accommodate artificial sports field use on the subject property. Question I have about this is, in our on Souk River Road, the horseshoe pitch is allowed as a permitted use on the ALR property. So I'm just curious why this would need to be excluded. Would it not just be an allowed or a permitted recreational use, or is it because it's an all-weather field?
Your Worship, through to the report, when we received information with regards to an application, or that the application was going to be made, we contacted, the Capital Regional District was working on behalf of the Community Association, and we realized that through the Capital Regional District contact that he was actually making an exclusion application on behalf of the Community Association. So we contacted the senior staff at the BC Land Commission to see why, and the preference from the Land Commission senior staff was it should come in as an exclusion application rather than a permissible use application. And the philosophy behind it was the preparation, et cetera, that's required to manipulate the ground to accept the field. Kind of paraphrasing what he said, it just takes the agricultural use away from the land.
I see.
And future remediations wouldn't really be practical. But they still have the ability to, upon their deliberations, to go from exclusion to an allowable use if they choose that route when it gets to them.
Okay. Do we have a sense of timing with them? Like how long?
They have been advised that there's some sense of urgency there. So whatever
Okay.
council pleasure is tonight, we can get this onto the Land Commission immediately.
Okay, great. Any further comments or questions? All right, and all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Anything you do, I think, to move it along would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Next is PI 4, Development Variance Permit for 6250 Souk Road.
Thank you, Your Worship. So tonight, we'll be looking at this development variance permit. In this case, the applicant is asking to vary a roof structure that will cover an existing deck for the purposes of outdoor seating in an eating area. The site is at the corner of Souk Road and Souk River Road there, just by the fields we were just talking about. And there are 3 businesses there, 2 well-established eating places, as well as a variety store. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. The applicant, in this case, is not the owner, and he's gone through some efforts to improve his site in the last little while. As the roof shelter is a new structure that will encroach into the required setback, a development variance is required. The intent is to permit the applicant to encroach 3 meters into the 4.5 meter setback in order for the roof shelter to basically match up with the existing deck. Here's an image of what it looks like. Basically, the 4.5 meter setback is the orange, and then they're looking to basically do the red. Just as a general overview, from a parking perspective, there's about 8 parking stalls on Souk Road, and then 3 stalls on Souk River Road around the corner. So they have a total of 11, and really they are required only 6. So there's plenty of parking on site for the outdoor additional seating. The site will include screen fencing and existing planter boxes. These will also be enhanced with some seasonal hanging baskets that the owner would like to put in, maybe be involved in Communities in Bloom. Within the plan, they've addressed rainwater, which will be trapped and channeled into downspouts and into the existing perimeter drainage. And just overall, the site, from a site plan perspective, they've provided the location of the building, the deck, the structures, access, parking, and general layout of the site. As I said, the parking requirements are met. Screening and landscaping has been met. Rainwater management has been met. And there's also wheelchair access that was provided to the site in 2005 when they did the original development permit. So they're pretty well covered there. Adjacent zonings and land uses are more or less RU2, and the subject property within the official community plan is Gateway Residential, which aims to have low-density residential growth along with some associated neighborhood-appropriate small-scale commercial development. The goal is to encourage a sustainable mix of small-scale neighborhood commercial, rural agricultural, single-family residential, and limited multifamily uses, promoting safety and functionality to land uses adjacent to the main arterial route in town, and creating a more organized and environmentally attractive and aesthetically pleasing entrance to town. These are just some examples of ideas. Community node is also a sub-designation that's been applied to this site. And within a community node, we're supposed to provide future compact forms of commercial development within the district. We're supposed to serve the traveling public and residents and provide neighborhood-scale commercial center for convenience items and services such as a restaurant, pub, gas station, or corner grocery store. The overall site design improvements from this would be having a safe and contained outdoor eating area and gathering space, having a more efficient capture of the highest and best use of the property, having year-round outdoor dining experience for both residents and visitors, that's a new word, residents, and affordable outdoor dining experience that is visible to Souk Road, increasing tourism and economic development potential for Souk. And that's about it. Our recommendation is that Council authorize the issuance of a development variance permit for PLN 01262 for an outdoor roof shelter located at 6250 Souk Road as per my report to Council dated today, June 27th, 2016.
Thank you. Councillor Ray?
I'll move the recommended action.
Second. Okay, it's moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any comments or questions? Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, to our planner. We're just going to put a roof over the deck that's already there. That's what we're doing. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Casper.
So is the value of the work over $50,000?
No.
So I thought that, is it for a variance or because we're doing a variance?
They don't have to do a development permit, just the variance.
Yeah.
Just because
but then because there's a deck there.
They had a permit for the deck originally.
Right. It just
it's a
seems
minor
odd,
one.
Because the footprint is it's the footprint, right? And whether there was a variance granted for the footprint to be created as far as setbacks is concerned, then in my mind, it shouldn't make any difference whether it's here or here.
It's a new structure, and it just requires It's just the rules.
You know, and I'm not being critical. I'm just thinking that's another food for thought on trying to streamline the process. If there's a way to streamline the process and basically lay it out so that you don't have to do this.
I think there is definitely sort of major, minor types of variance
That's really
approvals.
good to hear. I appreciate that.
Councillor
I think that's
Pearson?
great.
Well, and my question through you, Your Honor, to staff, is this something in development variance permits where we should have it already included, so that if you wanted to add a roof to a deck afterwards, there's no delay in the process? Like, because you'd be subject to building permits and safety and all the things like that. I think that would be going without, you come for a building permit, but you can't even get a building permit because you need a variance permit. And that, to me, just is delaying that process, when likely form and character is going to be exactly the same as it is.
Ms. Sullivan?
Sorry.
Or our CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just would like to suggest to Mayor and Council that you provide direction to staff through myself, that we take a look at the process and the procedures with respect to this issue and come back to Mayor and Council with some suggested efficiencies.
Okay, so I'll call the question on the motion then about issuing the variance permit first. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And then perhaps if a councillor would like to move that, exactly what our CAO just said about receiving some feedback on streamlining the process and creating efficiency.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Casper. Any further discussion?
I do believe our Director of Development Services had something to say.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Your Worship, I think years ago there was delegated authority for the minor development variance permits and development permits. I'm not too sure where the delegation went, but it was if we have direction from Mayor and Council to have some deliberations with regards to facilitating that delegation for minor works, where we could look at a deck and supposedly a year later a roof is going to go on it, that we can deal with those kind of things at staff level.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd look forward to that type of report. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? No? Okay. We're moving along. All right.
I'll just say, I think what Patty wanted to just inform everyone was that generally for a variance is that we do require public input. So that's the reason why we're here.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, I didn't ask for public input. We've already closed. We're already moving on. All right, I will like to provide that opportunity. My apologies.
I think when that store was rebuilt
Sorry,
after...
we do need your name and address for the record. Mr.
Carl
Linnell.
Linnell, 6930 Sellers Drive. I believe when that store burnt and was rebuilt, the septic field was put in just for the store. We have an awful time on the field with that whole corner. It's very, very wet. In the wintertime, we can't play on it. So, I know that putting the roof over it, to me, is going to add more customers, more bathroom uses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linnell. Anything further from council on this? Okay, we're moving along. All right, our next one is reports requiring action. RA1, remedial action, 6978 West Coast Road. Welcome, our bylaw officer. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council. The reason I'm here today is to request Council give consideration to a remedial action requirement. The property, pardon me, I'm out of breath just from the illness. I've received a complaint in my capacity as bylaw enforcement officer approximately 2 years ago. Subsequent to the initial investigation, there was a fire on the property a shed built near the property line. Fire department responded. The materials inside were gas and oils and those associated with automobile repair. As a result of that fire, it melted the siding on the adjacent properties' homes, and obviously they became very concerned, which drew further attention to the unsightly conditions on this property. I've attended a few times. I've sent property owners and occupant letters, tried to work with them to come up to an agreement in how we can action and get the property back to its proper state where the neighboring residents aren't impacted. I've been met with hostility from the property owner. As you can see by the photos attached, do you have the photos? Okay. Progress is very slow or non-existent. My most recent inspection at that property, because the occupant was aware that I was going to be considering bringing a report to council, became very hostile and belligerent in necessitating me to call the RCMP on my Crest radio for assistance. That inspection revealed that no action had been commenced since my previous visit. Tonight I stopped by on the way to this council meeting just so I could have a clear picture in my head as to what's going on and inform you accurately. The occupant has put up a variety of shelters or shanty shacks, if you will, trying to block the view from the property owners. He has about a 50-foot trailer on the property where he's housing his automobile parts. There's soil contamination. If a fire started in one of those buildings or on the property again, we may lose more than what his shed was valued at. The property owners have not contacted me. They're not willing to participate. They're not willing to take the responsibility of ownership seriously and enforce their occupant to clean the property up. And that's the reason for my attendance tonight.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. And through you to Ms. Mills. So just so for my own clarity, the fellow that's living and causing all the unsightly premises is a renter? He's not the actual owner?
Correct.
Okay, and you've had numerous dialogue with the actual owner that this is coming forward?
The owners, and my attendance on a particular day was the occupant was there. I explained the requirements of the bylaw, what was required to have the bylaw conditions met, and that I was willing to work out a schedule provided that they, comply, they have willingness to comply, and show some effort. That was the last communication I had with the property owners.
Okay, so in the staff report, there's basically two okay, I'm thinking of two things at the same time. There's two options for council to consider. If there is no further questions to staff, there is an opportunity to be heard, so any members of the public can speak to this. Councillor Parkinson.
And were the owners given an opportunity to come to council this evening, through your worship, to be able to speak?
A letter was sent to the property owners. One of the property owners, as it's a joint ownership, one of the letters was returned to me as moved.
Okay, so at this time, is there anyone that would like to speak to this matter from the public? I'm not seeing anyone. That would be the owners, but ask the question anyway. Okay, so on that note, we'll go back to council then. You have two options to consider here. Looking for someone to move a motion. Councillor Casper?
Well, I'll move the first recommendation that council direct staff to proceed with remedial action pertaining to the unsightly premises located at 6978 West Coast Road, including entering and coordinating the effective removal of these materials, and that charges for this work to be at the expense of the owner-occupier, and if unpaid on December 31st of this year, staff shall be added to and form part of the taxes payable in respect of the real property in question as taxes in arrears.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. And thank you,
Thank you, Your
Ms.
Worship.
Quickly.
Well, I was just going to say that if there are situations like this that are in the books right now, and you still have these procedures, I'm just laying out my personal opinion here, not the rest of council. I'd like to see these types of recommendations. This really gets through the community, and I think it's an important thing to do, because I'm sure there are other properties that may not be as bad as this, but a lot of people may view as very unsightly and create a risk or pose a risk to others except for the property owner, or maybe even themselves in general. So,
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, we'll move on to RA2, Shadow West Securities. Number of weeks ago, we received a delegation from Shadow West, and we had asked staff to work with the presenter to come forward with a staff report, and here it is this night, with a number of proposals and a recommendation for council to consider. Report straightforward. Questions? Councillor Berger, then Pearson.
Yes, thank you. In reading through this and even listening during the delegation when Mr. Babich came, I have some concerns with regards to the implications that this could have, as well as the sole sourcing that we are looking at, because we are looking at, with the recommendations, at just hiring somebody without going out to a tender. If a crime's permitted in an unpatrolled area, then do we spread and increase our patrols? Does it go, like, this could grow quite far. It could be far more than what we're seeing just on the agenda here. And then how do we pick which areas of our community that are patrolled? And how do we pick which residents are going to benefit from this added patrol? The package speaks about district property being patrolled, but I haven't heard of any increase in vandalism or crime to particular district property. I'm aware that some residents are currently banding together and paying for patrolling of their residential neighborhood. Do we then offer them a break because now we're patrolling somebody else's neighborhood? Personally, I'm looking forward to our new RCMP member coming in September. I'm hoping that they'll have an effect. If we're still seeing an increase in crime or property crime, then I would like us to maybe look at our next 5-year financial plan and maybe look at adding yet another RCMP member. I'm not sure that I can support sole sourcing to a local security company, which I'm sure he does fantastic work, but for me it's much larger. How do we pick who we patrol and who we choose to keep somewhat quote-unquote safe and which areas we don't? For me, it just doesn't fit right. We have an RCMP contract that we rely on our police to do a great job for us. Even in areas or times of the day when they're stretched, they are still on patrol themselves, so they get dispatched out at any time of the day or night. So I'm personally not comfortable with going ahead with this one.
Okay, Pearson, then Parkinson.
Yes, through you, the chair, Your Worship, to CAO. I'd like to have the input of Staff Sergeant MacArthur on this, because I think that was kind of that further discussion that we had at the next meeting. See if he supports this recommendation. It's a good report, and it's come back exactly the way that I think that I personally had envisioned it to come back to us. Now I think echo Councillor Berger's sentiments is perhaps we should put it out to contract or out to tender. It'll likely end up being somebody local anyways, but I'd still like to have if you have an opportunity through the chair to talk to Staff Sergeant MacArthur, because although he liked the idea and was warm to it, I didn't get sort of the sense that it was fully endorsed, and he wanted to sort of have some input to that. So.
I have, go ahead, Marcio.
Yeah, if I may shed some light on the sole source issue first. They're the only security company in Souk that can provide this service, so that even if we went to RFP, it would be a waste of time because they're the only game in town. Unless we wanted to do an RFP with Langford, Colwood, Metchosin, but then again, you have people from away from Souk who don't really know the neighborhoods and the troubled areas coming into town and trying to provide a service that they're not really familiar with where the trouble spots are. In speaking to Staff Sergeant MacArthur, he and the owner of Shadow West Security do work together. They do have an understanding of where jurisdictions start and finish. I think Staff Sergeant MacArthur would not want to see a private security firm replace any contingent of RCMP officers, and that is not the case. We will be seeing one come on in September, and the contingent and the request and the strength for the RCMP will be, I would assume, continue to be a priority of this council. They do work together quite well. Mr. Babbage does know where his responsibilities start and end. The recommendation from staff to Mayor and Council is that we focus on public properties only. And the reason the recommendation is combining number 1 and number 2 together is that there is growing concern from mayors and council and CAOs across the region with respect to the disbanding of the tent city in Victoria, and there's huge concern that those homeless people will start to come out to the West Shore and into Souk. We already do have a little bit of an issue with respect to some homelessness and some drug issues hanging around in our parks. We've got complaints from citizens with respect to human feces and garbage and all the like being found in our parks. So the recommendation from staff is to focus first and foremost on our parks, our public boardwalks, the public boat launch, our parks, and our public buildings. And the suggestion is let's try it for a year. We can ramp it up in the summertime, and then when tourism season is done, we can ramp down the patrols and just take a look and see what happens over the next year. I'm not certainly promoting one way or the other. I just think it's the risk to our parks and our tourism should the tent city be disbanded and we do get further activity out in Souk. We would want to be in a good position to be able to address that, to the point where I've suggested to staff that we take a look at our parks bylaws at the recommendation of a couple of law firms that Victoria didn't do before. They didn't anticipate tent city, and so they didn't have their bylaws up to speed. So I am also looking to staff to take a look at our bylaws in our parks to make sure that Mayor and Council have the proper authorities to have bylaw enforce removal of people from our parks.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
I reviewed our video from our last meeting in regards to this, and when the staff sergeant was speaking, he said that the relationship needs to be spelled out amongst the security company and the RCMP, that there were liability issues between the two, and that it tends to make the RCMP vulnerable in certain situations. He also talked about the need for signage as well. So that's a good possibility as well for the neighborhood watch signs in the community and the citizens on patrol signage. Thank you.
Councillor Ray, then Casper.
Thank you. I think this really started with social media grasping and the quick dissemination of information about what was happening in our community. And even if we were, so I don't have a problem. I think Mr. Babbage and the RCMP understand, or Mr. Babbage fully understands where his role would be, but certainly could provide clarity in the contract. But I think there's a real advantage to having something like this at these hours, because if people become aware that we have security patrolling in our community, even if it is just the parks and the boardwalk, it does start to give a bit of a deterrence to people thinking about, as they move around our community, that there's that we have a security company watching what's happening. So I don't know that they have to go into the residential areas initially, and I think if you provide this opportunity, we take a look at what the stats are. The RCMP have all the stats for the last year, month by month, and just take a look to see if there is any decrease in stats or if things go up. So I support it, and I think our policy talks about looking locally first to local businesses, and if they are the only service, then if it's within the policy, I don't have a problem supporting it for options 1 and 2 combined.
Councillor Casper?
No, I'm going to support, number 1 and perhaps some relating to number 2, building and parking lot. And I'm just assuming that we're talking about this building and parking lot. And because there's a park next to this building, I don't see there's going to be a huge increase in costs because they're right next to each other. And if they're going to patrol nightly park and boardwalk patrols, if this park's included, then to add on this building, even if it's just on a trial basis, twice a night or something along those lines, I'm more inclined to go with that. And then depending on what happens in the future, because if you drive from point A to point B, you're actually doing a de facto cruise. So you're getting something for nothing without saying, but you go from here to here to here, and you're going through all kinds of residential neighborhoods anyway. So anyway, I'm prepared to support 1 and 2.
No, that's a good point, because if you were at the boardwalk and you walked it, let's say there and back, and then you drove here, you would have to park in this parking lot anyway to access John Phillips Park.
I think so.
Right? So, unless you drove into the park. But I mean, you're right here. No, I agree with the park patrols only, not the neighborhood patrols.
No, and what about our building?
And in our building as well. We do have assets here and the like, and just sort of leaving it at that, seeing how it goes. I'm not, in terms of where the funding comes from, I've sort of been hemming and hawing, because with the future policing cost reserve, I'd almost, although this falls into security, I'd like to take it from the police. It almost feels like it should just go through part of our general operations. I mean, if it's parks, it should come from park. Like you've got to cut the grass, you have to maintain your park. It's sort of, as opposed to dipping into a reserve or a surplus, that I'm not comfortable with that in a sense. I'd rather just see it as part of the general operations. You got to turn on your hydro, you have to empty the garbage, you got to add your security to that place as well. So to me, it should just come from. That's where I'd like to see the funding come from. Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, and I hear all the through the chair to the CAO. I would support this, but I would feel comfort or more comfort if the CAO, Mr. Babich, and Jeff MacArthur all got in a room so that there was a documented process and conversation that had taken place, so that we could have a report back from you. Say, that what did this conversation look like? So that because security firms have that reputation of always being on the edge of how far they go. So I'd like to kind of have a comfort level to know that we're employing a good, solid performer, but also that the RCMP are endorsing our plan, or that they're laying some of that groundwork out for us, because they're our primary security in the community. So. Thank you.
Yep. No, I would agree with that as well. I did forward this report to Staff Sergeant MacArthur just to get his input. I just think with recent activity, he's been quite busy, but we have seen significant changes with the auxiliary RCMP role where, things have changed for auxiliaries. And what I don't want to see is, I'm not discrediting Mr. Babbage. I know he does work with the CRD, but I don't want to see some overexcited security guard vigilantism taking over our parks either. And, you know, so that's where I think just getting some feedback. Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And I think it goes to the comments you made about where we source the funding from. And I think if we take it out of the general budget, because I think when you take it out of policing cost reserve, it kind of sends a message that this is tied. But if it comes out of the parks budget or something like that, that's totally separate, I think, you know, it gives a different picture. So.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing then is that we do want to receive just some further clarity from staff in that we'll proceed, receive some feedback from our CAO and conversations with the staff sergeant before. Yes.
In order to save a little bit of time, if Mayor and Council provided staff direction to work with David Babbage and Staff Sergeant MacArthur to come up with an agreement for Council's consideration, that would probably save a step in there.
Okay, that sounds good, because the other piece that our Staff Sergeant, it's the liability piece as well, and okay.
Just a point to note that Mr. Babbage does carry $5 million in liability insurance. Yes. So he's got ample coverage. But again, I agree that we need to make sure that Staff Sergeant and the owner of Shadow West Security and Mayor and Council are all on the same page and in agreement with what the terms are.
Yes. Okay. Someone make that motion? Councillor Ray?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm just noticing that the Director of Finance, I think, is looking to say something.
Oh, pardon me.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to add the way the financial impact is, and there's basically trying to say that it isn't in the budget already, so it would go into one of the budgeted line items, or we'll make a new line item, but it's essentially being this year funded by surplus because we've already done the property tax.
Oh,
billings.
I see. Of course, yeah. Right. Yes, it's not policing then.
It would go into, I think, either protective services budget as a line in there, or if you want it in parks, or that's up to wherever.
Yeah, I think it belongs in parks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Councillor Ray, did you move the motion? No, I didn't. Okay. Pardon me. Would someone please move the motion?
I just have a question. Could we move the recommendation
as
written, subject to staff?
We have it. It's all clear that staff provide a report to council outlining an agreed upon process following consultation with the District of Sauk, Shadow Security, and RCMP for community security options.
Well, I was hoping to get it started, and the recommendation here is that council focus on security patrols for public properties for which the district is responsible, combining options 1 and 2, and then it's got a total monthly cost, and then we add that, because that's the sort of rider, isn't it?
Well, I thought that council wanted further information.
July. July 11th. July 11th.
Okay, will someone please make a motion? Then my understanding was that you wanted some further information before we rolled ahead. So now it's the case you're willing to roll ahead and get information back at the same time. So let's just streamline this. Councillor Ray.
Okay. Don't erase what's there. That council focus on security patrols for public properties for which the district is responsible, combining options 1 and 2 for a total monthly amount of whatever that came to, subject to staff providing a report to council outlining agreed upon process, and the rest of it.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Casper. Our CEO.
Thank you, through your worship. Can I just make a friendly suggestion that it's not process we're after, but a terms of reference?
I'm sorry?
I think Mayor and Council want to know that the Staff Sergeant, Shadow West Security, and Mayor and Council are all on the same page, and that would be, I think, called a terms of reference.
Oh, yes, that sounds great.
For the contractual work.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Berger's opposed. Thank you. Okay, next is RA3, our 2015 Statement of Financial Information Report that we have received. Earlier on, our Director of Finance did state that this needs to be submitted by June 30th, and we've just received it. So Council can receive said report, and then also we can approve it and authorize it to be published and to forward on to the ministry, and then we could, at the July meeting, have a public input portion available to receive any public input. However, we would have approved it and sent it on.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Casper is moving that Council approve the 2015 Statement of Financial Information and authorize staff to publish it on the district website and forward it to the Ministry of Community, Sport and Cultural Development and hold a public input session at the next regular council meeting. Is that what you're wanting?
No, the SOFI, Your Worship, just for a point of clarification, the SOFI report is our expenditures from the prior year.
Yes.
Public doesn't have input into that. These are factual statements of financial matters, financial expenditures.
I should say maybe public comment.
Public comment, sure, but there's nothing that we can do to change
No, I
the public
understand
perception.
that because it's our authorized statements.
That's right.
I think there was a point raised earlier that because it had just received, and tonight would be your night to speak to it, that there wasn't an opportunity for the public to speak to it because it just came out today.
If I could, Your Worship, this is a required filing by the ministry in a format that they put together.
Yes.
So we just put it together and file it. It's our financial statements.
No, I totally understand. I totally understand that. I think it's just if the public does want to comment on it and any feedback, constructive, otherwise, to take into consideration for the following year. I know that there's nothing we can do about it because it's money that's been spent. Like I totally hear that.
And we can't change the format. This is
no, I know.
Yeah.
But just we can receive feedback on it. You know how great a job we're doing. You know, whatever people would like to say. It's just that opportunity. Mr. Pete, our Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you want to postpone this item to the next meeting, now that this report's out, you can do so. If you want to get public feedback. Otherwise, you're looking at a public commentary, but that period's already passed in this meeting.
That's fine. I know that, like, even if it was today, it's still past, right? Like, it's still last year's numbers that can't be changed. They're audited. It's. Councillor Casper?
Yeah, so what I would like to ask staff to consider is that the thresholds that are used, it says employees with gross salaries greater than $75,000. That is the upper limit. Some jurisdictions actually bring that dollar amount down to a smaller amount, so they capture more payouts. And some jurisdictions also include every business that receives money, not just at a $25,000 threshold. So, I'm more inclined to actually get more information out to the public as to capture all of the companies or all of the individuals that received money from the district. That's just my personal opinion, because I don't have a problem with, staff pushing a button and saying, here's what everybody got paid. Because I know this is the limit. It doesn't mean to say you can't go lower. This is the upper limit that you're allowed to go. You can't go to 100,000 and use that as the cutoff. And so you can go below that. So that's why they've got this dollar amount here. That's how it was explained many, many years ago to me as to what that means. And so it's purely discretionary. We can do it all. We could list everybody that got money.
Mr. Blackall, our Director of Finance, you did mention earlier that there's your
through the
form.
chair to the member, I just would like our corporate services people to weigh in on if there's any privacy issues around that, because we're disclosing what's required under the law. So if we disclose more, I just would like.
Well, all's we're, if I may, all's we are disclosing is the minimum amount that we can, that's the minimum. There's nothing precluding a municipality for giving out more information. Like, we're in the age of transparency.
Let's receive some feedback. Easy.
Thank you, Your Worship. So through the chair, I'll answer hopefully most of that question for you. So under the legislation, as you were speaking to, Councillor Casper, was that the requirement is to report anything over 75,000. I think that I think that's probably a good catchment, because I don't think very many people make that much money or higher, for that matter. If you were to set it lower at 50, yes, you'll probably catch a lot of more people. But as Brent has mentioned, there may be a privacy breachment that we'd have to look into to make sure that we could do that.
All right, I'm looking for, just in the essence of moving on, you had a motion that you wanted to say with the public comment at the next meeting, but that didn't seem to go anywhere, so.
Well, is there a direction given? I'm
happy to walk people through the report. It is different than last year. I've added some material that should have been in there in the past. So just flip through this.
Again, I'm looking at, sorry, Mr. Blackwell, I'm just looking at the time, and we still have a few things to get through, so can I just leave it that if councillors have questions for clarity?
Sure. Yep.
Rather than the whole report? Any questions from councillors? I mean, we've all seen one of these before. Mr. Peters, our Director of Corporate Officer, did say we could postpone receiving this. Did you say something like that? Pardon me.
Your
Mr.
Worship.
Joseph, not Mr. Peters. Yes, we could discuss or field more questions at the following council meeting. My apologies for getting your name wrong.
And you don't necessarily have to postpone this, Your Worship. If you want to put this report on the next council meeting, that's not a problem to do either. People could speak to it at public input.
But we still would need to send it off. We need to authorize it going off to the province tonight and to post it. That was what you wanted to do?
That was the intent of my motion.
Okay, because then we could discuss it in further detail at that time. Council is just receiving it. You may have some questions that you want to see answered. So there was a motion put forward. Would anyone like to second that?
I'll second it.
That's seconded by Councillor Ray. Any further discussion on the motion? The only other piece that was added was that we receive it at the next council meeting. And then that gives the public an opportunity to comment on it. Council can ask questions, and perhaps in the meantime we can look at whether or not you want to change the threshold, the question that Councillor Casper had. We can look at that as well. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, reports for information, RI1, Mayor and Council reports. I'll be very brief. A representative from the UBCM did come out and meet. They do visits to every community around BC every few years, so it was an opportunity for the UBCM staff member to meet with us. They do have a few priorities that they are working on in the moment that is sort of consistent all over. One of them with the federal announcements on infrastructure funding. They are looking for the province to maintain their 33% funding and potentially increase it and to see the funding flow through to municipalities. They are working at medical services, First Nation training, and as well as the impact of ratified arbitration agreements and the like. So there's a number of resources that we can tap into as we go forward. It's not just about a conference. They do so much more on our behalf. And our peers share similar concerns that we have here. So we're never alone, and I thought it was a really good meeting. We also met with the Vancouver Island Major Crime Unit. They are looking at major crime investigations. Councillor Ray and Councillor Casper were at that meeting, and they are looking to expand across the island. This is if there's a major incident, serious crime, homicide in the community, and the amount that we would have to pay for those investigations. So we'll see more of that in due course. Major accidents. We talked about some of our challenges here in Souk, and I'll leave it at that. Other members of council have anything? Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I don't have anything to report, but I just wanted to thank staff for their flexibility in opening the district office into the evenings this week so that people can get their taxes paid. I think that was quite creative, and thank you.
Tomorrow evening and Thursday evening till 8 p.m.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
On Wednesday, June 15th, I attended the Souk Food Bank open house, and they were giving out tours and explaining what all the volunteers do there. The 2015 summary, 3,528 hampers were given out in our community. 2,618 children use the food bank, and we have 5,684 adults using it at the present time. Approximate value is $220,000 that they spent on the food bank for last year. And if, like you say, if there's more people coming out to Souk from Victoria and that, the burden will be even higher. On Thursday, we had a meeting with the Tasauk Nation. We had an MOU meeting. And on Thursday, June 16th, was the Souk Region Chamber Mixer. It was held at the Royal Bank. Had a tour of the new Royal Bank and all it looks. It's looking really great. On Thursday, June 23rd, we Mayor Tate and I attended a meeting for the Souk Seniors Drop-In Society. The society the purpose of the meeting was to give an update on the direction in which the society was heading, and they're looking for a temporary home. On Friday, June 24th, I went to a meeting for the 50th anniversary regional quilt project that our CAO, Teresa, passed over to me. And there are 25 blocks in the quilt. One is for each municipality and one for the electoral area. And they'll all be connected together and showcasing our area. There are also elements from the First Nations in these quilts. And there's a quilter from each municipality participating in it. So that's kind of cool. And then I went to the CRD Arts Development Services Art Plan Implementation, and they had over 200 people attending these meetings for the arts in the Greater Victoria area. Saturday was Legion Week, and Sunday was the Souk Region Museum Open House and Salmon Barbecue. Thank you.
Okay. Her worship's back. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I'd just give you a heads up that the CRD board on Wednesday will be sitting as a committee of the whole to discuss the results of the informal referral of the regional growth strategy and the comments that all the municipalities have submitted. And we're also going to be visited by, I'm assuming, Mr. Abbott and Mr. Wall, who visited us, and to, I guess, have a session with the regional board around the governance issues. So I just thought you should know that. There may be another form of council meeting in October, and there are a couple items that will be on the agenda, one of which is dealing with environment issues. And this was a recommendation from the Environment Committee, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson, Councillor Casper. Anything further from councillors? Yeah, I'll turn to our CAO. Thank you. And that brings us to I-1, correspondence received June 7th to June 20th. Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just noting the letter from the Souk Lions Club Canada Day to yourself. It doesn't, pardon me? It references you attending the flats for the parade at 12:30. I'm not quite sure if that's also extended to councillors. It says other dignitaries, but the letter was just to yourself, and it doesn't really talk about council, the councillors. So does anybody have?
It would.
I'm assuming that includes us.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
It would be nice for us to parade together, as we have in the past. I'm just looking.
May I just make a comment on that?
Yes.
Your Worship?
Thank you.
The letter is the same one that just went out every year for the past number of years.
Okay.
That I've delivered to the council chambers every year, so nothing has changed with that except for Lauren was busy, so I just signed them on his behalf. So the letter came from the Lions Club, but it's meant for all of council. And
In that letter, sorry, Councillor Parkinson, what time are we to sort of gather? Okay, and they usually want us there like 12:45, 12:30, 12 at the Loggers Pole, correct? Same place. Okay. All right. If you are available to be there, that would be great. And of course, after the speeches, there's the cake and cutting of, which is always fun, and handing out of. Yes. So, motion to receive the correspondence file, please. Moved by Councillor Pearson. Seconded by Councillor Berger. Any further comments on the correspondence? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We will see you on Canada Day. Wow, that came up fast. And a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Ray. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.